Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Nightmare Narratives. I can picture some of you already in bed, maybe some of you just getting home from work. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, I'm glad you're here. If this helps you relax or sleep, please like and subscribe. It means a lot. Now let's get you comfortable, and I'll tell you tonight's story. My name is David Songbird, but everyone calls me Dave. I'm a ranger with the Daniel Boone National Forest in Kentucky, and I've been doing this job for 13 years now. People think being a ranger is all about helping lost hikers and putting out campfires, but my specialty is something different. I listen. I'm a sound monitoring specialist. That means I spend my days recording the forest. Birds singing, deer moving through brush, even insects buzzing. We use these sounds to track animal populations and figure out if the forest is healthy. It's quiet work, but I like it that way. I should probably tell you why I'm so good at this job, even though I'm partially deaf. When I was in the Army, an explosion went off too close to my position. Ever since then, my hearing hasn't been the same. I wear special hearing aids now, and I've learned to work with audio equipment that picks up sounds I can't hear naturally. In a weird way, losing some of my hearing made me better at really listening to what's there. I'm 37, never married, and I live alone in a small cabin near the forest. My life is simple. Coffee in the morning, checking my equipment, heading into the woods with my recording gear, and spending hours just listening to what the mountain has to say. I never believed in ghost stories. When other rangers talked about strange things happening in the forest, I figured they were just telling tales to pass the time. Mountains don't sing. Dead people don't talk. That's what I thought. Until Pine Mountain changed my mind. It started in early spring of 1982. The head ranger called me into his office on a Tuesday morning. He looked tired. "Dave, we've got a situation up on Pine Mountain," he said, pushing a folder across his desk. "Wildlife's acting strange. Deer are leaving the area. Birds aren't nesting. Even the insects seem off." I opened the folder and saw repo, reports from other rangers, and a few concerned hikers. All of them described the same thing. Animals running away from a specific valley system like something was chasing them out. "You want me to check it out?" I asked. "That's why you're here. Take your equipment. Record everything. Tell me what's scaring the animals away." I loaded up my truck that afternoon. I had my portable recording equipment, pretty advanced stuff for 1982. Reel-to-reel tape recorders, microphones that could pick up sounds from hundreds of feet away, and a spectrograph analyzer that could break down frequencies and show me exactly what I was hearing. The whole setup weighed about 60 pounds and ran on heavy batteries. Pine Mountain is in a remote part of the forest. The road turns to dirt about 5 miles from the main highway, and then it's just hiking trails from there. I parked at the trailhead and loaded everything into my backpack. The walk to the valley would take about 3 hours. The forest felt wrong from the start. It was too quiet. In 13 years of ranger work, I'd never walked through woods this silent. No birds sang, no squirrels chattered. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. I set up my base camp in a small clearing near the center of the valley. The area was perfect for sound monitoring, surrounded by trees with good sight lines in every direction. I placed microphones at different points around the clearing, each one connected by wire to my main recording station. By the time I finished setting up, the sun was getting low. Fog was rolling in, thick gray fog that made the trees look like ghosts. Temperature inversions are common in mountain valleys during spring. They can create weird acoustic effects, making sounds travel strange distances or seem to come from the wrong direction. I told myself that was probably what was happening here. Just weather playing tricks. I started. Ted, my first recording at dusk. I put on my headphones, turned on the equipment, and listened. At first, everything seemed normal. Wind through pine branches, a creek babbling somewhere in the distance. The usual forest sounds, just quieter than they should be. Then I heard it. It was so low I almost missed it. A deep rumbling tone that I felt more than heard. My equipment was picking it up clearly, but my damaged ears could barely catch it. I checked the spectrograph. The frequency was subsonic, below the normal range of human hearing. Subsonic sounds exist in nature. Earthquakes make them. Waterfalls. even wind moving through canyon systems. But this was different. This sound had a pattern to it. It would rise, hold steady for exactly 30 seconds, then fall, then silence for 5 minutes. Then it would start again. I recorded for 6 hours straight that first night. The subsonic tone continued the entire time, never changing its pattern. Rise, hold, fall, silence. Rise, hold, fall, silence. That pattern meant something. Nature doesn't count to 30. I didn't sleep well that first night. Every time I started to drift off, I'd feel that low rumbling in my chest, the subsonic frequency pushing through the tent fabric, through my sleeping bag, straight into my bones. When morning came, the fog was even thicker. I could barely see 20 feet in any direction. I made coffee on my camp stove and reviewed the recordings from the night before. Listening back, I could hear my own breathing on the tape, the sound of me adjusting my position, the creak of my folding chair, and underneath it all, that steady, pulsing tone. I ran the tape through my frequency analyzer. The tone was sitting at around 18 Hz, right at the edge of human hearing. At that frequency, sound doesn't just enter your ears, it enters your whole body. Your lungs vibrate, your heart rhythm can be affected. Extended exposure can cause anxiety, fear, even hallucinations. Maybe that's what was happening to the animals. Maybe this subsonic frequency was driving them away. But where was it come? Melody that rose and fell like waves. The sound was beautiful and terrible at the same time. My hands were shaking as I adjusted my equipment. I increased the gain, filtered out the background noise, focused on the voices. With better clarity, I could hear dozens of individual singers. Maybe more. They were singing a death song. I don't know how I knew that. I just did. The melody carried grief and anger and a kind of fierce pride that made my throat tight. These were warriors, singing. Men who had died fighting for something they believed in. I pulled off my headphones and looked around my camp. The fog pressed in from all sides. My lantern flickered in a breeze I couldn't feel. "Hello?" I called out. My voice sounded small and stupid in the darkness. The singing stopped. The silence that followed was complete. No wind, no insects, nothing. Then, slowly, the singing started again. But this time it was different. The voices were singing the same melody, but the words had changed. They were singing my name. "Songbird? David Songbird. Hear us, Songbird." My whole body went cold. I grabbed my flashlight and swept it across the clearing. Nothing. Just fog and trees and darkness. The voices continued, weaving my name into their death song. They knew I was there. They knew who I was. I should have left right then. Packed up my equipment and hiked back to my truck in the dark. But I didn't. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was 13 years of ranger training telling me to document everything and report back. Maybe it was something else, something in those voices calling to a part of me I didn't understand. I stayed. I recorded through the night. The voices sang for hours, sometimes loud, sometimes so quiet I had to strain to hear them. They sang in that strange language, mixing my name into verses I couldn't translate. As dawn approached, the fog finally started to lift. Gray light filtered through the trees. That's when I saw them. Men standing at the edge of my camp. Dozens of them. They were translucent, like shapes made of smoke and morning mist. I could see the trees through their bodies. They wore old clothing, leather and cloth decorated with beads and feathers. Their faces were painted for war. They were Cherokee warriors, and they were staring right at me. One of them stepped forward. He was taller than the others, with a scar running down his left cheek. He opened his mouth, and I heard his voice both in my ears and through my headphones at the same time. "You hear us, Songbird. You are the first in many years." I couldn't move. Couldn't speak. I just sat there in my folding chair, surrounded by recording equipment and ghost warriors as the sun came up on Pine Mountain. The ghost faded as the sun rose higher. One moment they were there, translucent but visible. The next, they were just morning fog burning off in the light. But I knew what I'd seen. My recording equipment knew too. The voices were still on tape, still singing when I played it back. I should have left. Every rational part of my brain was screaming at me to pack up and get out. But I'd been a soldier before I was a ranger, and soldiers don't run just because they're scared. Besides, these warriors, whatever they were, hadn't hurt me. They'd just sung to me. I needed to understand why. I spent that day in the valley, reviewing my recordings and researching in the small notebook I always carried. I'd studied some Cherokee history when I first started working in these mountains. The Cherokee had lived here for thousands of years before they were forced west on the Trail of Tears in the 1830s. These mountains were full of their history. Pine Mountain had been a burial ground. I found references to it in my notes, a place where warriors killed in battle were laid to rest. The Cherokee believed that the spirits of warriors would protect the land even after death. But something had disturbed them. Something had woken them up and made them start singing again. That second night, I set up extra recorders. I wanted to capture everything. Audio from multiple angles, different frequency ranges, overlapping coverage. If these spirits were real, I was going to document them properly. The fog rolled in again at dusk, thick and cold. I sat in my camp chair with my headphones on and waited. The singing started earlier than before. As soon as the sun touched the horizon, I heard the first voice rise from the valley, then another, then dozens more, all joining in the same haunting melody. This time I could understand some of the words. My brain was adapting to the language, picking out patterns and meanings. They were singing about their homeland, about the mountains and rivers they'd protected, about the battles they'd fought to defend their people, and they were singing about being forgotten. The warriors appeared in the clearing as darkness fell, more of them than last night. They formed a circle around my camp, swaying to their own singing. Their translucent forms glowed faintly in the dark, casting no real light, but somehow visible anyway. The tall warrior with the scar approached me again. When he spoke, his voice came from everywhere at once, through my headphones, from the trees, from inside my own chest. The white men built roads over our graves. They cut down the sacred trees. They forgot we sleep here. We sing to call our brothers home. We sing to reclaim what was stolen. I found my voice. What do you want from me? You hear us. You must carry our message. Tell your people this land is sacred. Tell them we will not rest until it is respected. More spirits emerged from the forest. Warriors, yes, but others too. Women and children. Elders. An entire village of ghosts, all of them singing the same song. They walked through my camp like I wasn't there, passing through my equipment, my tent, through me. And they passed through my body. I felt their memories. I saw a village beside a river. Children playing in the water while their mothers worked nearby. I felt the warmth of a fire in winter, tasted food I'd never eaten, heard laughter in a language I didn't speak. I felt the joy of the hunt, the pride of the warrior, the love of family. Then I felt the soldiers coming. The visions hit me like punches. Guns firing, screams, blood in the river, families torn apart. The forced march west under armed guard. The cold, the hunger, the graves left along the trail, so many graves. And I felt the fury of the warriors who'd been killed defending their people. Warriors who'd been buried here in these mountains, who'd been promised their rest would be honored, their graves kept sacred. Promises that had been broken. I opened my eyes. When had I closed them? And found myself lying on the ground. My equipment was still running, capturing everything. The spirits stood over me, still singing. You feel what we felt, the scarred warrior said. You know what was taken from us. Now you must help us take it back. How? I managed to ask. How can I help you? Find our graves. Find what remains of us. Show your people we are still here. The singing grew louder, more intense. The subsonic frequencies I'd first recorded were building, creating a pressure in the air. The trees around my camp began to shake. Small rocks and pine needles lifted off the ground, floating in the charged atmosphere. The spirits weren't just singing anymore. They were exerting power, reclaiming their territory the only way they could, through supernatural force. Wait, I said, getting to my feet. You're scaring away the animals. You're disturbing the whole forest. We must. The animals flee, the white men will notice. They will come, and they will finally see. They will finally remember. I understood, then. The spirits weren't just singing to be heard. They were singing to drive everything else away. They wanted to make this valley so uncomfortable, so disturbing, that people would have to investigate. They wanted to be found. And I'd walked right into their trap. I was their messenger now, whether I liked it or not. The singing continued through the night. I recorded all of it, even as my own mind started to blur. The more I listened, the more I understood. The Cherokee language was seeping into my brain. The warriors' memories were mixing with my own. I started to lose track of who I was. Dave Songbird, Ranger, or someone else, someone older, someone who'd died defending these mountains long ago. At one point, I caught myself singing along with the spirits. My voice joined theirs, words in Cherokee flowing from my mouth without conscious thought. I was singing about battles I'd never fought, mourning losses I'd never suffered, crying out for a homeland I'd never known. That scared me more than anything else had. I forced myself to stop singing. I grabbed my portable recorder, the one piece of equipment that was truly mine, that I'd carried all through my military service, and focused on it. The solid weight of it, the familiar buttons and dials. This was real. This was now. I was Dave Songbird. I was alive. I was human. The spirits noticed me pulling away. The scarred warrior knelt beside me. His translucent face was inches from mine. You cannot resist us, Songbird. You hear us. You are part of us now. Sing with us. Help us reclaim our home. No, I said. My voice shook, but I meant it. I'll help you. I'll find your graves. I'll tell people what happened here, but I won't lose myself to do it. I'm still me. The warrior studied me for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. You have strength. Good. You will need it. I spent the next day barely conscious. The singing had stopped at dawn, like always. But the spirits' memories were still echoing in my head. I kept seeing visions of the past, Cherokee families living in these mountains, warriors, training for battle, sacred ceremonies in hidden valleys. But I also saw something else. I saw where they were buried. The visions showed me a hillside on the eastern edge of the valley, a place where the mountain formed a natural shelf, protected from wind and rain. The Cherokee had laid their honored dead there, covering them with stones and marking the graves with carved posts. That was centuries ago. Now, there was a hiking trail running right through it. I packed up my recording equipment, leaving the remote microphones in place. I needed to investigate this hillside, but I also needed to keep documenting. If these spirits were real, and I knew they were, then my recordings might be the only proof. The hike to the eastern hillside took about an hour. The fog was lighter during the day, but it never fully disappeared. It clung to the ground like smoke, making everything gray and dreamlike. I found the place from my visions easily. The trail cut across the hillside exactly where the burial ground had been. Hikers had been walking over Cherokee graves for years, never knowing what lay beneath their feet. I got down on my hands and knees and started clearing away leaves and dirt. Within minutes, I found the first stone, carved with symbols I recognized from my visions. A marker, a grave marker. I found 3 more within the hour. The burial ground was extensive, covering nearly half an acre. Dozens of graves, maybe more, all of them forgotten, all of them violated by the careless placement of a modern trail. As I worked, I felt the temperature drop. The fog thickened. I heard the singing start even though the sun was still up. The spirits appeared on the hillside around me. There were even more of them now. Hundreds of translucent forms covering the slope. They stood over their graves, and their singing was no longer just mournful. It was angry. The scarred warrior mater ilized directly in front of me. His face was twisted with rage. You see what they did to us. Our bones scattered, our markers buried, our spirits disturbed. This is why we sing. This is why we will never rest. I understand, I said. But destroying the forest won't fix this. Let me help you properly. Let me bring the right people here. Your people do not care. They have never cared. Some do. I promise you, some do. Give me time. Give me a chance to do this right. The spirits pressed closer. The singing grew louder, more intense. The subsonic frequencies were so strong now that my vision was blurring. The ground itself seemed to shake. You will tell them, the warrior said. You will make them understand, or we will make this mountain uninhabitable. We will reclaim it by force, and no living thing will remain. I believed him. The power these spirits had was growing every day. They'd already driven away the animals. If they wanted to, they could probably drive away humans too. Make the valley so disturbing, so dangerous, that it would have to be closed. I'll tell them, I said. I swear. But you have to give me time, and you have to trust me. The warrior stared at me with eyes that had seen their homeland stolen, their people destroyed, their graves desecrated. He had no reason to trust anyone, least of all a white man working for the very government that had betrayed his people. But after a long moment, he nodded. We will give you until the next full moon. 1 month. If the graves are not honored by then, we will take this mountain back by force, no matter what stands in our way. The spirits faded. The singing stopped. I was alone on the hillside with my discoveries and my recordings and the weight of an impossible promise. I hiked back to my camp and gathered my equipment. My hands shook as I packed everything away. I documented something incredible, proof of an afterlife, of spirits, of justice that transcended death. But I'd also become responsible for something I barely understood. As I started the long hike back to my truck, I heard one last voice on the wind, the scarred warrior speaking softly. Do not fail us, songbird. The mountain is singing. Soon, everyone will hear. The head ranger didn't believe me at first. I sat in his office with my recordings and my photographs of the grave markers, telling him about singing spirits and Cherokee warriors, and I watched his face go from concerned to skeptical to worried about my mental health. Then I played him the tapes. The voices came through clearly. Hundreds of them, singing in Cherokee, weaving through the subsonic frequencies in patterns no natural phenomenon could create. When I played the section where they sang my name, the ranger went pale. What the hell is this, Dave? It's exactly what I told you. The burial ground was disturbed when they built the trail. The spirits are active, and they're not going to stop until this is made right. It took 3 days of meetings and phone calls before they brought in the Cherokee cultural authorities. When the tribal representatives arrived, I took them up to the valley and showed them everything. They knew what they were looking at immediately. The grave markers, the layout of the burial ground, even the songs on my recordings. All of it confirmed Cherokee burial practices from the 1700s and early 1800s. This was a significant historical and cultural site that had been completely forgotten. More importantly, it was sacred, and it had been violated. The Cherokee representatives listened to my recordings with tears in their eyes. One elder, a woman named Mary White Deer, translated the songs for me. They're calling their brothers home, she said quietly. They're angry, yes, but more than that, they're heartbroken. They thought they'd been forgotten. They thought no one would ever remember them or honor what they did. The restoration project started within 2 weeks. The hiking trail. Ale was rerouted around the burial ground. Archaeological teams came in to properly map and document the graves. The Cherokee Nation sent representatives to perform ceremonies, proper ceremonies, with respect and reverence. I was there for all of it. I kept my recording equipment running, documenting everything. The subsonic frequencies gradually changed. The anger in the singing faded. New harmonics appeared, higher, lighter, almost joyful. On the night of the full moon, exactly 1 month after my first encounter, I set up my equipment one last time in the valley. The fog had cleared. The sky was bright with stars. The spirits appeared at midnight. There were even more of them than before. The entire village, hundreds of souls. But they looked different now, more solid, more peaceful. They stood on the hillside where their graves had been restored, and they sang a new song. It wasn't a death song anymore. It was a celebration. The scarred warrior approached me one last time. He looked younger somehow, less burdened. He placed a translucent hand on my shoulder, and I felt warmth instead of cold. You kept your promise, Songbird. We will not be forgotten. Our children will know we rest here. This is enough. Will you rest now? I asked. Will you finally be at peace? Soon. But first, we must say goodbye. The spirits gathered in a circle on the hillside. They began to sing together, all of them in perfect harmony. The sound was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. It filled the valley, echoed off the mountains, rose up to the stars. I recorded every second of it. As the song reached its peak, the spirits began to fade, not disappearing, but transforming. Their translucent forms becoming light, rising up like embers from a fire. They drifted skyward, still singing, until they merged with the stars themselves. The last to go was the scarred warrior. He looked at me one final time and smiled. Thank you, brother. Then he was gone. The next morning, I checked my recordings. Every tape I'd made over the past month had been mysteriously erased, except for that final ceremony. The spirits' farewell song remained, preserved perfectly, like they wanted that memory to survive. I still work for the Daniel Boone National Forest. I'm 43 now, 6 years older than when this all started. My job hasn't changed much. I still monitor sounds, still track wildlife, still spend long days alone in the woods. But I've taken on additional responsibilities. I'm the official liaison between the Park Service and the Cherokee cultural authorities. I help identify other sites that might be sacred or historically significant. I teach training sessions on respecting indigenous history and recognizing signs of cultural importance. And I'm learning Cherokee. I study with Mary White Deer twice a week. She says I have a gift for it, like the language is already familiar somehow. I don't tell her that sometimes, late at night, I still hear echoes of those warrior songs in my head, or that I sometimes dream in Cherokee, seeing memories that aren't mine. The valley at Pine Mountain is quiet now. The animals have returned. Birds nest in the trees. Deer graze in the clearings. The burial ground is marked and protected, with a new trail that leads visitors to an information board explaining the site's significance. Sometimes when I'm working in that valley, I feel like I'm being watched, not in a threatening way, more like remembered, like those warriors are still there in some form, standing guard over their homeland, grateful that someone finally listened. I've played the recording of their final ceremony for exactly 3 people, the head ranger, Mary White Deer, and one Cherokee elder who wept when he heard it. I've been asked to share it publicly, to let anthropologists and historians study it. I've refused. That song wasn't meant for the world. It was meant for me. Proof that I didn't imagine it all, and a reminder of what ends when we forget. Last month, I was surveying a new section of forest near the Tennessee border when my equipment picked up a subsonic frequency, a low, steady tone with harmonic overtones. My blood went cold when I heard it, because I recognized the pattern. There are other singing mountains, other burial grounds, other spirits waiting to be remembered. I packed up my equipment and marked the location. Next week, I'll bring Mary and the tribal authorities. We'll listen together. We'll investigate. And if we find more forgotten graves, we'll help those spirits find peace too. Because that's my job now. That's what I do. I listen to the mountains. And when they sing, I make sure someone hears. The Cherokee have a saying, the land remembers. I used to think it was just a poetic phrase. Now I know better. The land does remember. And sometimes when we forget to listen, it finds a way to remind us. All we have to do is pay attention to the songs. My name is Margaret Rowan, but everyone calls me Maggie. I've been a ranger in the Adirondack Mountains for 14 years now, and I thought I'd seen everything these woods had to offer. I was wrong. I'm a plant pathologist, which means I study sick trees and rare plants. I have a PhD, I've published research papers, and I pride myself on being logical. I don't believe in ghosts or curses or any of that nonsense. At least, I didn't. It was September 1977 when the assignment came in. A group of hikers had reported something strange about a tree deep in the forest, said it gave them nightmares, made their cameras stop working, made them feel like they were being watched. My supervisor laughed it off, but protocol said we had to check it out. So they sent me. I packed my gear on a Tuesday morning, soil sample kit, measuring tape, camera, compass, notebook. Everything I needed for a standard tree assessment. The tree was called the gallows oak, named after hangings that supposedly happened there centuries ago. I'd heard the stories growing up, local legends about a cursed tree that remembered the people who died on it. Stories to scare kids. Nothing more. The hike took me 5 hours, 8 miles from the nearest trail, deep into areas where few people ever go. The forest was beautiful that day, leaves just starting to turn gold and red. Birds sang, squirrels chattered, everything felt normal. Then I entered the clearing and everything went quiet. The gallows oak stood alone in a circular space about 50 feet wide. No other large trees grew near it, just grass and small shrubs. The oak itself was massive, maybe 400 years old, with a trunk so thick 3 people couldn't wrap their arms around it. Its branches spread wide, creating shadows that seemed darker than they should be. I approached with my camera. The first sign something was wrong came when I tried to key a picture. The camera clicked, but the flash wouldn't fire. I checked the battery, full. I tried again. Nothing. Strange, but cameras malfunction sometimes. I knelt down to examine the soil. It was rich and dark, almost black. When I took a sample, I noticed something that made me pause. The dirt was warm, not sun warm. The tree's shadow covered this spot. It was warm from below, like something underneath was generating heat. I pulled out my measuring tape and began recording the trunk's circumference. That's when I saw the faces. They weren't carved there. They were natural formations in the bark, knots and patterns that just happened to look like human faces. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all twisted in expressions that looked like screaming. I'd seen plenty of trees with patterns that looked like faces before. It's called pareidolia, our brains finding familiar shapes in random objects. But these were different. Too detailed, too consistent, and all of them looked terrified. I circled the tree, taking notes, trying to stay scientific. The bark was rough under my fingers, but in some spots it felt wrong, warmer than other spots, and oddly soft, almost like skin. I jerked my hand away and told myself I was being ridiculous. That's when my compass started spinning. I held it flat in my palm, watching the needle whirl in circles like a fan blade. The Adirondacks have magnetic anomalies sometimes. Iron deposits in the ground can throw off compasses. But I'd never seen one spin like this, so fast it was just a blur. I looked up at the branches above me. They were perfectly still, no wind at all. But as I watched, one branch, a thick limb about 20 feet up, began to move, slowly, deliberately. It curled downward, and for just a second, before I convinced myself I was seeing things, it looked exactly like a crooked finger beckoning me closer. I took 3 steps back. "You are a scientist," I said out loud to myself. "There's an explanation for all of this." But my hands were shaking as I packed up my gear. I'd come back tomorrow, I decided. Take more samples. Bring better equipment. For now, I needed to get out of this clearing before it got dark. I didn't run, but I walked fast. Behind me, I swear I heard the sound of creaking wood, like something enormous, slowly bending. I didn't look back. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those faces in the bark. I told myself it was just a strange tree in a strange place, nothing more. But I kept thinking about how quiet the clearing had been, how wrong it felt. The next morning, I went to the local historical society. If I was going to study this tree properly, I needed to know its history. An elderly librarian named Mrs. Chen helped me dig through old records and newspaper clippings. What I found made my coffee go cold. The gallows oak wasn't just named for hangings. It was an execution site for over 70 years. From 1754 to 1823, the colonial and early American authorities used that tree to hang condemned prisoners. The records showed at least 200 documented executions. But that wasn't the worst part. Many of those executed weren't criminals. They were accused witches, most of them women, killed during the hysteria that swept through the region in the late 1700s. I read testimony after testimony of people screaming their innocence as the noose went around their necks. "Nasty business," Mrs. Chen said, reading over my shoulder. "My grandmother used to say the tree remembered, said it absorbed all that death and pain like water into roots." "Trees don't have memories," I replied automatically. She gave me a strange look. "You been out to see it?" "Yesterday." "And you're going back?" "It's my job." She shook her head slowly. "My grandmother also said the tree doesn't like visitors, said it gets protective of its dead." I thanked her and left, though her words stayed with me. Gets protective. What did that even mean? I returned to the clearance, Jiushi, that afternoon. Better prepared this time. I brought extra batteries, a backup camera, and a soil thermometer to measure those temperature differences I'd noticed. The walk-in was uneventful, but as I approached the clearing, I felt it again, that sudden silence, like the forest itself was holding its breath. I stepped through the tree line, and the gallows oak loomed before me, its branches casting those two dark shadows across the grass. I got to work immediately, trying to stay focused on science. I took soil temperature readings at different distances from the trunk. The results made no sense. Right at the base of the tree, the soil was 93 degrees Fahrenheit. 3 feet away, it was 65. 6 feet away, 62. The heat was coming from the tree itself, or from directly beneath it. I photographed the bark patterns again. When I developed these photos later, they would show something I hadn't seen with my naked eye. Shadows in the background of every shot that looked like people hanging from branches, but I didn't know that yet. I was examining the exposed roots when I found the bones. They were buried shallow, just beneath a tangle of roots that had grown up and around them. A human skull, brown with age, still wearing an iron collar. As I carefully brushed away dirt, I found more. Finger bones, ribs, pieces of spine. The roots had grown through the skeleton, wrapping around bones like they were holding on to them. My heart was pounding. This was a burial site, an unmarked grave. How many more bodies were under this tree? I was so focused on the bones that I didn't notice the branch lowering behind me. Not until I felt something touch my shoulder. I spun around. A thin branch, no thicker than my thumb, had extended down from above. It had been touching the back of my neck. As I watched, frozen, it slowly withdrew upward, leaves rustling despite the still air. "Wind?" I whispered. "Just wind." But there was no wind. The rest of the forest was perfectly calm. I stood up fast, backing away from the roots and bones. That's when I saw them, the other branches, dozens of them, all slowly moving, bending downward, reaching, not randomly. They were reaching for me. I grabbed my bag and stumbled backward. One branch swooped down in front of my face, close enough that leaves brushed my cheek. I swatted it away and kept backing up, my eyes locked on the tree. The faces in the bark looked different now. Their mouths seemed wider, more desperate. And I could swear they were watching me with eyes made of knots and shadows. I made it to the edge of the clearing, stopped, forced myself to breathe. "You're imagining it," I said out loud. "Low blood sugar, dehydration, stress." I pulled out my camera for one final shot, just to prove I'd been there. I aimed at the tree and pressed the shutter. The camera exploded in my hands. Not violently, no flames or loud bang, but it split apart like something had reached inside and pulled it open from within. Pieces clattered to the ground. Lens, film roll, battery chamber. The back of the camera was covered in what looked like tree sap, but it was warm and smelled like copper, like blood. I ran. I won't pretend I didn't. I ran through those woods like something was chasing me, branches whipping my face, roots trying to trip me, And maybe I was imagining it, but I swear I could hear creaking behind me, like enormous wooden joints moving. I didn't stop running until I reached my truck. I should have stayed away. Any rational person would have. But I'm a scientist, and scientists don't run from things they don't understand. They study them. At least, that's what I told myself. The truth is, I couldn't stop thinking about those faces in the bark, those bones in the roots. Something was wrong with that tree, something that went beyond normal nature, and I needed to understand it. I spent 3 days preparing. I read everything I could find about the gallows oak. I interviewed residents who remembered stories their grandparents told. I learned that at least 47 of the people hanged from that tree had been declared innocent decades later. Innocent people killed during witch panics and false accusations, their bodies left to hang for days as warnings. One old farmer told me something that made my blood run cold. My great-great-grandmother was hanged from that tree in 1797. She was a midwife. They said she cursed a baby that died during birth. Her last words were recorded in the trial documents. "This tree will remember what you did to me." I also assembled better equipment. An electromagnetic field reader, new technology in those days. A tape recorder. A thermal camera, borrowed from the university. If something strange was happening at that tree, I was going to document it. I returned on a Friday morning. The clearing looked the same as before, but as I approached, my EMF reader started beeping. The electromagnetic field around the tree was off the charts, fluctuating wildly. The needle jumped from 0 to maximum and back again, like something was pulsing. I set up my equipment in a circle around the tree, staying about 15 feet back. The thermal camera showed what I'd suspected. The tree trunk had hot spots all over it, some reaching over 100 degrees. But the pattern of heat wasn't random. It formed shapes. Human shapes, dozens of them, pressed against the inside of the trunk like they were trying to get out. I took a deep breath and pressed record on my tape recorder. September 23, 1977, 10:47 a.m. Dr. Margaret Rowan conducting field research on Quercus alba specimen, commonly known as the gallows oak. Initial readings show highly unusual electromagnetic and thermal activity. Continuing investigation. I approached the tree slowly, watching for moving branches. They hung still today, but I didn't trust them. I knelt at the base and began digging carefully, looking for more bones. My trowel hit something metal after just a few inches. I brushed away dirt and found an iron shackle, old and rusted, still, locked around a wrist bone. "Multiple human remains confirmed," I said to the recorder. "Evidence of restraint devices. This appears to be a mass gravesite." That's when I heard the voice. It was soft, barely more than a whisper, and it came from everywhere and nowhere. At first I thought it was wind in the branches, but there was no wind. Then I thought maybe it was my imagination, but I could hear actual words. "Help us!" I jerked upright, spinning around. The clearing was empty except for me and the tree. "Hello?" I called out. "Help us!" The voice came again. Multiple voices now, overlapping, men and women and even children. "Please, help us!" I looked at the tree. The faces in the bark seemed more prominent now, more defined. And as I watched, I saw something impossible. One of the faces, a woman's face, twisted in pain, moved. Its mouth opened wider. "We're still here," it whispered. "Still trapped." My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the recorder. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Trees don't talk. Dead people don't talk. There was a rational explanation. Maybe gas from decomposition. Maybe underground water creating acoustic effects. Maybe I was having a mental breakdown. "Who are you?" I asked, then immediately felt stupid for talking to a tree. The voices came stronger now, urgent. "Innocents. Murdered. Bound here by violence. The tree feeds on our pain. It won't let us go." I stepped closer, scientific training warring with pure terror. "What do you mean, feeds?" The bark under my hand suddenly felt warm, alive. I snatched my fingers back and saw something that made me gasp. Where I'd touched the tree, the bark rippled like water, and for just a moment I saw beneath it, not wood, but something else. Pale shapes pressed against the inside of the trunk. Faces, hands, bodies trapped in the tree itself. "Oh my God," I breathed. The tree shuddered. All of it, the entire massive trunk, vibrating like a plucked string. Leaves rained down from above. The branches began to move again, faster this time, reaching and grasping. "It knows you see," the voices wailed. "It knows you understand. It won't let you leave. It needs to feed." A branch swept down and wrapped around my ankle. I screamed and kicked, but it held tight, the wood somehow flexible and strong as rope. Another branch grabbed my wrist. I yanked backward with all my strength and felt my skin tear as I pulled free, leaving blood on the rough bark. The moment my blood touched the tree, everything changed. The faces in the bark began screaming. I could hear them now, truly hear them. Hundreds of voices shrieking in agony and rage. The tree lurched, roots bursting from the ground like tentacles. The thermal camera captured it all in horrifying infrared. The tree's entire structure lighting up bright white with heat, pulsing like a heartbeat. More branches grabbed at me. I dodged one, ducked under another, but they were coming from all directions. One caught me across the back, hitting hard enough to knock me down. I scrambled on hands and knees, my equipment scattering. A root erupted from the ground right in front of my face. It was thick as my arm and moved like a snake reaching for my throat. I rolled aside and it smashed into the dirt where my head had been. "Why are you doing this?" I shouted at the tree. The answer came, not in words, but directly into my mind, a flood of images and emotions. I saw every execution, felt every drop of fear and pain as the noose tightened. The tree had absorbed it all, every death, every scream, every moment of terror. It had drunk that suffering like water, and over centuries, it had become something else, something aware, something hungry. And it was so hungry. I staggered to my feet and ran for the edge of the clearing. Branches whipped at me from all sides. I felt cuts opening on my arms, my face. A root caught my foot and I went down hard, the wind knocked out of me. I looked back and saw the tree's shadow spreading across the ground toward me, moving against the sun. The shadow touched my leg, and agony shot through me. It felt like freezing and burning at the same time, like my leg was being pulled apart from the inside. I screamed and dragged myself forward, out of the shadow, gasping. I had to get out, had to survive, had to warn someone about what this thing was. Using a fallen branch as a crutch, I limped toward the tree line. Behind me, I heard the tree groaning, roots tearing through earth. It was trying to move, to follow me. I made it to the edge of the clearing and collapsed behind a normal oak, clutching my injured leg. When I looked back, the gallows oak stood motionless again, but I could feel its attention on me. Watching. Waiting. And I knew with absolute certainty that I couldn't let this thing keep existing. Somehow, I had to destroy it. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove straight to the ranger station and pulled every file we had on forest fires, controlled burns, and how to safely fell dangerous trees. My supervisor took one look at my torn clothes and bloody arms and wanted to send me to the hospital, but I refused. There wasn't time. "That tree is dangerous," I told him. "It needs to come down." "Maggie, it's a historic landmark. We can't just..." "It killed people. It's still killing people in a way. The ground underneath is full of unmarked graves. This isn't about conservation anymore. It's about safety." He didn't believe me about the supernatural aspects. I didn't even try to explain that part. But the human remains were enough. He gave me authorization to conduct a safety assessment and possible removal if deemed necessary. I knew what I had to do. The tree fed on death and suffering had grown strong from it over centuries. But it was still a plant, and plants have weaknesses. Fire would be the most effective, but a blaze in these woods could spread and become catastrophic. I needed something more targeted. I spent the next day gathering supplies: a portable drill, copper stakes, salt water solution, herbicide, and, after a long debate with myself, road flares and a fire extinguisher. If things went wrong, I'd burn it. If things went really wrong, I'd try to contain the flames. I also brought something else. From the Historical Society, I'd obtained copies of the execution records, names, all the innocent people who died on that tree. If the voices were real, if those spirits were truly trapped, maybe knowing their names would matter. Maybe acknowledging them would help. I hiked in at dawn on Sunday, wanting as much daylight as possible. The forest was unnaturally quiet again as I approached the clearing, like every bird and animal had fled. The gallows oak stood waiting, and I swear it looked larger than before. Its branches spread wider, its trunk thicker. "I'm here to help," I called out as I entered the clearing. "The innocent ones, I'm here to free you." The response was immediate. The electromagnetic field reader I'd mounted on my belt started screaming, the needle pinned at maximum. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in seconds, my breath misting in the sudden cold. The voices came, desperate and pleading. "Hurry! It knows! It's calling for strength! Hurry!" I didn't waste time. I moved to the trunk and began drilling holes deep into the heartwood. The drill bit kept jamming, like the tree was fighting me, the wood somehow moving to block the drill's progress. But I forced it through, drilling 8 holes in a circle around the massive trunk. Into each hole, I poured salt water mixed with concentrated herbicide. Salt to poison the roots. Herbicide to stop growth. Old remedies, but effective ones. The tree screamed. I don't know how else to describe it. The sound came from deep inside the wood, a groaning, shrieking noise that vibrated in my chest. Branches thrashed overhead. Roots burst from the ground all around me, writhing like they were in pain. "I'm sorry," I said to the tree, "but you can't keep doing this. You have to let them go." I pulled out the copper stakes next and began driving them into the ground around the tree, forming a circle. Copper conducts electricity, and with the tree's electromagnetic field so strong, I hoped the stakes would disrupt whatever force was binding the spirits to this place. The moment the circuit was complete, light flashed inside the tree trunk. Not fire, something else, something cold and blue. The thermal camera would later show the heat signatures inside the tree going crazy, all those human-shaped hotspots moving, swirling. The faces in the bark became fully visible now, no longer just patterns but actual faces pushing through from inside. Dozens of them, hundreds, all screaming silently. I could see their eyes, could see the terror and pain trapped there for centuries. "Listen to me," I shouted over the noise. "I know your names. I know you were innocent." I pulled out the list and began reading. Sarah Winters, hanged 1797, midwife, innocent. Thomas Gray, hanged 1803, farmer, innocent. Rebecca Chen, hanged 1789, healer, innocent. With each name, the blue light grew brighter. The faces became clearer, and something else happened. The malevolent presence I'd felt from the tree, that hungry awareness, began to separate from the trapped spirits. I could feel the difference now. The tree itself had become a predator, but its victims were still distinct, still themselves, just imprisoned. Margaret Stone, hanged 1776, innocent. John Little Bear, hanged 1781, innocent. The tree fought back. Branches crashed down around me, missing by inches. Roots grabbed at my legs. I kept reading names, kept acknowledging the dead, giving them recognition they'd never received. Elizabeth Moore, hanged 1795, innocent. A branch slammed into my shoulder, spinning me around. The list flew from my hands. I scrambled for it, but a root pinned my arm down. I struggled, feeling bones grind in my wrist. The tree was trying to add me to its collection. I could feel it, the pull, like it wanted to absorb me into that wooden prison with all the others. I could feel my consciousness starting to blur, memories that weren't mine flooding in, the noose tightening, feet kicking empty air, the awful moment when breath wouldn't come. "No!" I screamed, and grabbed one of the road flares with my free hand. I struck it against the ground, and it burst into brilliant red flame. The tree recoiled. Not much, but enough. The root loosened, and I yanked my arm free. I touched the flare to the saltwater-soaked wood, and it caught immediately. Fire raced up the trunk, following the lines of herbicide I'd poured in. But this wasn't a natural fire. The flames burned blue and cold, not orange and hot. They spread through the tree like veins lighting up, and everywhere they went, the trapped faces began to change. The expressions of agony shifted to something else. Relief. "Thank you," the voices whispered. "Thank you for remembering us." The blue fire consumed the tree from inside, but no heat touched me. No smoke filled my lungs. This fire was burning something else, something spiritual. The malevolent consciousness that had grown in the tree shrieked and raged, but it couldn't stop what was happening. The spirits it had fed on for centuries were finally breaking free. One by one, the faces faded from the bark, not disappearing, transforming. I saw shapes of light rising from the trunk, human forms made of pale blue flame, stretching and unfolding after centuries of being compressed and trapped. They looked at me as they rose, and in their eyes was gratitude and peace. The last to emerge was a woman's spirit, and somehow I knew her. Sarah Winters, the midwife. She paused before me, her form flickering like a candle flame. "Build something," she whispered. "So they remember. So this never happens again." Then she was gone, rising up through the canopy and vanishing into the morning sky. The tree collapsed. Not violently, not all at once, but slowly, like it was finally allowed to age properly. The trunk crumbled to dust. The branches fell and disintegrated. Within minutes, nothing remained of the gallows oak but a pile of ash and the copper stakes standing in a circle. I stood in the center of that circle, bleeding and exhausted, and watched the sun rise over the empty clearing. They found me 3 hours later, passed out next to the remains of the tree. I spent a week in the hospital with a broken wrist, numerous lacerations, and what the doctors called severe exhaustion. My story about equipment failure and a tree falling on me during the storm, there had been no storm, satisfied most questions. But the remains I'd uncovered couldn't be ignored. Over the next 6 months, a proper archaeological team excavated the site. They found 183 sets of human remains, many with evidence of hanging, broken neck vertebrae, rope burns preserved on bone. The iron collars and shackles told their own story. I published my findings, minus the supernatural elements, in a paper titled Environmental Factors in Historical Trauma Site Preservation. It won awards. I became an expert in identifying and protecting sites of historical injustice. But that's not the most important thing I did. In the clearing where the gallows oak once stood, there's now a memorial. Granite stones, each carved with a name. All 183 victims, including the 47 who were eventually declared innocent. Sarah Winters' name is carved first, at the center. Underneath, a plaque reads, "Remember the innocent, honor the truth, never forget." I visit every few months. The clearing is peaceful now. Birds sing there, flowers grow. New trees have started taking root, young oaks and maples, ordinary trees with no dark consciousness lurking in their heartwood, but sometimes on quiet. Team mornings when the mist hangs low, I see shapes in that mist. Human forms, barely visible, standing near the memorial stones. They don't frighten me. They feel like guardians now, watching over their own monument, making sure they're never forgotten again. I've expanded my research since then. There are other sites throughout the Adirondacks, throughout New England, throughout the country, places where mass violence occurred, where innocent people died, where the earth itself absorbed that trauma. Not all of them have developed consciousness like the gallows oak, but some have. I can feel them now, that same wrongness, that same hunger. I document them. I help establish memorials. I make sure the stories are told and the victims are acknowledged. It's become my life's work and maybe my penance. I should have understood sooner what that tree was trying to tell me. The spirits weren't the danger. The tree itself was, feeding on their trapped suffering, growing strong from their endless pain. Now I know better, and I teach others. My courses on environmental history and plant consciousness are the most popular at the university. Students think I'm talking in metaphors when I warn them that nature remembers. Some of them will learn the truth eventually, the ones who are sensitive enough to feel it. There's a young ranger I'm training now, a woman named Collins who reminds me of myself at her age. Skeptical, scientific, confident. Last week she asked me if I really believed trees could be conscious. I thought about lying, about giving her the safe answer. Instead, I showed her a photograph. The only one I have left from that day at the gallows oak. It's warped and strange, the tree barely visible through distortions. But in the background, if you look carefully, you can see them. Dozens of human shapes, hanging from branches that cast no shadow. There are more things in these woods than we understand, I told her. And if you're smart, you'll learn to respect that. She's studying the photograph now, seeing what I see. And soon, when she's ready, I'll take her to one of the other sites. The hanging tree near Lake Placid, the execution rocks in the western mountains, the burial grounds that were built over and forgotten. Because the truth is, the gallows oak wasn't unique. It was just the first one I encountered. And somewhere in these ancient forests, in places where violence soaked into the soil and death fed the roots, there are others. Trees that remember, trees that hunger, trees that wait. And someone has to watch them. Someone has to make sure they don't claim any more victims. Someone has to remember the dead so they can finally rest. That someone is me. My name is Margaret Rowan, and I'm a ranger in the Adirondack Mountains. I used to study sick trees. Now I study trees that have made themselves sick by feeding on human suffering. And I won't stop until every spirit is free and every victim is remembered, even if it takes the rest of my life. My name is Benjamin Crowfeather, but everyone calls me Ben. I've been a ranger at Catskill Park for 21 years now. Before that, I spent 6 years in the Navy as a diver. I've pulled drowning victims from lakes. I've searched flooded caves for missing people. I've seen bodies that stayed underwater too long. None of that prepared me for what lives in Bone Hollow Creek. I'm 46 years old. My mother was Mohawk, my father white. I grew up hearing stories about water spirits and things that hunt from the deep places. I never believed any of it. My wife, Sarah, teaches at the elementary school in town. Our 2 boys, Michael and Danny, are 15 and 13. They love fishing in the park streams. They used to, anyway. I'm the water safety specialist for the northern section of the park. That means I monitor the creeks and streams, check water quality, make sure swimming areas are safe. I know every creek in my territory, like I know the lines on my own hands. I can tell you where the current runs fast, where the pools get deep, where kids like to jump from the rocks. Bone Hollow Creek wasn't supposed to be dangerous. It runs through a valley about 8 miles from the main visitor center. The water's clear and cold, fed by mountain springs. Most places it's only 3 or 4 feet deep. Families wade there in summer. Kids catch salamanders under the rocks. That's why the disappearances didn't make sense. The first one happened 3 years ago. A man named Robert Chen, 34 years old, experienced hiker. He went out alone on a Tuesday morning in June. His car stayed parked at the trailhead for 3 days before someone reported it. We searched for a week. Found nothing. No body, no backpack, no sign he'd even been on that trail. Then it happened again 6 months later, then twice the next year, then 3 times this past year. 7 people total. All of them vanished near the same spot on Bone Hollow Creek. All of them experienced outdoors people who knew what they were doing. We searched every time, brought in dogs, helicopters, volunteers. Nothing. The other rangers started calling it the Bad Bend, that section where the creek curves around a big boulder and the water runs smooth and dark. Hikers still went there, but fewer each year. Some people said the place felt wrong. They couldn't explain it better than that. Just wrong. I didn't believe in feelings. I believed in evidence and procedures. So when my supervisor asked me to do a full investigation of the creek bed, I said yes. I'd dive the deep pools, check for hidden currents, find a logical explanation. Maybe there was an underwater cave where bodies got trapped. Maybe the current was stronger than it looked. There had to be a reason. I put together a dive team. Tom Riverside, 52, been diving longer than I have. Carol Deepwater, 38, rescue specialist who'd saved 12 people from swift water. Both of them Park Service certified, both of them professionals. We planned the dive for a Wednesday in early September when the water would be calm. The night before, I couldn't sleep. Sarah asked me what was wrong. I told her nothing, just thinking about the dive plan. But that wasn't true. I kept thinking about something my grandmother told me when I was little. She said water has memory. She said some places remember the old ways, the old things that lived there before people came. She said you have to respect those places or they'll take you down to the dark. I was 46 years old, a trained professional. I didn't believe in grandmother stories, but I should have. We arrived at Bone Hollow Creek at 6 in the morning. The sun was just coming up through the trees, turning the mist over the water orange and gold. It looked peaceful, beautiful even. Tom unloaded the diving gear from his truck while Carol set up our safety ropes and communication system. The equipment was military surplus from my Navy days. Good quality, reliable. We had underwater cameras, rope systems, depth gauges, compasses. Everything we needed for a thorough search of the creek bottom. I did water quality tests first. That's standard procedure. The pH was off, more acidic than it should be. The mineral content was strange too, lots of calcium and something else I couldn't identify. I made notes in my log but didn't think much of it. Mountain water always has weird chemistry. How deep do you think it gets? Carol asked, looking at the dark pool near the boulder. Creek's only 4 feet most places, I said. Maybe 10 or 12 in the deep pools. Looks deeper, Tom said. He was right. The pool looked like it went down forever. But that was just the dark water playing tricks on your eyes. Had to be. We got into our gear. Wetsuits, tanks, masks. Tom would go first. I'd follow. Carol would stay topside as safety officer. Standard 3-person dive team protocol. We tested our communication system. Underwater radios that crackled and hissed but mostly worked. Radio check, Tom said into his mouthpiece. Loud and clear, Carol answered. Tom waded in first. The water came up to his waist, then his chest. Then he put his regulator in his mouth and went under. I watched his bubbles move away from shore, heading toward the deep pool. After 30 seconds, I followed him in. The water was colder than I expected. Even through the wetsuit, I could feel it pulling heat from my body. I kicked toward the bottom, 4 feet down, 5 feet, 6 feet. The bottom was covered in smooth rocks and sand, exactly what you'd expect in a creek. Tom's voice crackled in my ear. Bottom's normal here, moving toward the pool. I followed his bubbles. The creek bottom gradually sloped downward. 8 feet deep, 10 feet, 12 feet. The water got darker. My compass started acting strange, the needle swinging back and forth like it couldn't decide which way was north. Tom, you seeing anything unusual? I asked. No answer. Tom? Static. I kicked harder, following where I'd last seen his bubbles. The bottom dropped away suddenly, going from 12 feet to nothing. Just black water going down and down. My depth gauge started spinning. 20 feet, 30 feet, 50 feet. That was impossible. The creek wasn't supposed to be more than 15 feet anywhere. Carol, I said into my radio, I've lost Tom. Depth gauge is malfunctioning. Say again? Her voice was broken up by static. I've lost... My radio went dead. I was alone in dark water that shouldn't exist, looking for a partner who'd disappeared. The cold was worse now, seeping into my bones. I could see maybe 5 feet in front of my mask. Everything else was black. Then I saw the bones. They were arranged in a spiral on the creek bottom. Deer bones, I thought at first. But then I saw the skull. Human. And another one next to it. And more bones arranged in careful patterns around flat rocks that looked almost like altars. My heart hammered in my chest. I reached for one of the skulls. Needed to see if it was real, or if the dark water was making me see things. Something moved in the corner of my vision. I spun around, kicking up silt from the bottom. Nothing there. Just dark water and my own panicked breathing inside the regulator. Then I saw Tom. He was deeper down, at least 60 feet if my eyes could be trusted. He wasn't moving. His arms floated at his sides like he was relaxed, but something was wrong with the way he hung in the water. Too still, too peaceful. I started swimming down toward him. Had to reach him. Had to Hands grabbed my ankle. I looked down and screamed into my regulator. Tom was below me, yes, but Tom was also right here, gripping my ankle with fingers that were too long, too pale, too strong. Tom's face stared up at me through the murky way. But the eyes were wrong. Too big, too dark, reflecting light like an animal's eyes. Not Tom. Something wearing Tom's wetsuit. I kicked hard, panicking, all training forgotten. The thing held on. Its grip was like steel cables wrapped around my ankle. It started pulling me down, away from the surface, away from light and air and safety. My hand found the knife strapped to my leg. I pulled it free and slashed at the arm holding me. The blade hit something solid and bounced off. The thing didn't even flinch. It just kept pulling me down into the dark. I was going to die in this impossible water, dragged down by something that shouldn't exist. That's when I saw the others. More shapes in the deep water, pale and long and wrong. They moved through the darkness without tanks or masks, swimming like they'd been born underwater. One of them was dragging the real Tom deeper. His body was limp. Bubbles still came from his regulator, but slow. Too slow. I did the only thing I could think of. I hit the emergency release on my weight belt. The lead weights dropped away, and I shot toward the surface like a cork, the thing's grip finally breaking free. I came up gasping and choking, ripping the regulator from my mouth. Carol was there in seconds, grabbing my vest, pulling me toward shore. "Where's Tom?" she shouted. I couldn't answer. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't do anything but shake and stare at the dark water. Something had Tom. Something that lived in the impossible deep. Something that collected bones and wore the faces of the dead. And we'd just announced our presence by swimming right into its home. Carol dragged me onto the shore. I lay on the rocks, coughing up creek water, my whole body shaking. Not from cold, from terror. "Where is he?" Carol demanded. "Where's Tom?" "Gone," I managed to gasp out. "Something pulled him down." "What do you mean, something? What did you see?" I looked at her. Professional, trained, rational Carol. How could I tell her what I'd seen? She'd think I had nitrogen narcosis, that I'd gone crazy from diving too deep. But Tom was somned. "Till down there. There's a cavern," I said. "Deep. Deeper than it should be. I stopped, started again. We need to call for help, now." Carol got on the radio while I sat on the shore trying to make my hands stop shaking. Rescue teams would come. The park would send divers, equipment, everything we needed. But I already knew they wouldn't find Tom. Not alive. Maybe not at all. The rescue team arrived an hour later. 6 divers, 2 from the county sheriff's department, 4 from the volunteer rescue squad. I told them everything except the part about the things in the water. I said Tom went into a deep underwater cavern and didn't respond to radio calls. I said I tried to follow but lost him in the dark. They dove for 3 hours. Found the cavern system, found the bones, found Tom's air tank at 90 feet, still half full of air. Didn't find Tom. The sheriff's diver, a man named Rodriguez, surfaced, looking shaken. "There's something wrong with that water," he said. "The depth readings don't make sense. Compasses won't work down there. And the bones, Jesus Christ, the bones. There must be dozens of bodies down there." "Human bones?" the sheriff asked. "Some of them, mixed with animal remains, all arranged in patterns." Rodriguez peeled off his mask. "I've been diving 20 years. Never seen anything like it." They called off the search at sunset. Too dangerous, they said. They'd bring in specialized cave diving equipment tomorrow. The sheriff posted a deputy at the trailhead to keep people away. Everyone agreed we'd resume in the morning with better gear and more divers. I didn't go home. I told Sarah I had to stay and coordinate the search. That was partly true, but really I couldn't leave. Those things in the water had Tom. I'd looked into those 2 big eyes and seen intelligence. Purpose. They'd taken Tom for a reason. Carol stayed with me. We set up camp. Chairs near the creek. She built a fire as the sun went down. Neither of us talked much. "You saw something down there," she finally said. Something you're not telling anyone. I stared at the fire. You wouldn't believe me. Try me. So I told her. Everything. The thing that grabbed my ankle, the others in the deep water, the eyes that reflected light, the way they moved without diving gear, all of it. Carol was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "My grandfather was Seneca. He told stories about things that live in deep water. He called them the drowned ones. Said they used to be people, but they went down into the water and something changed them, made them into hunters. You believe that?" I believe my grandfather didn't lie. She poked the fire with a stick. And I believe something took Tom. We sat in silence. The creek made small noises in the dark, splashing, gurgling, normal water sounds. But now they sounded different, like something moving just under the surface. "I'm going back down tomorrow," I said. "That's insane. Tom might still be alive." "You know he's not." She was right. I did know. But I also knew I couldn't leave him down there. Not with those things. And I needed to understand what they were, why they were there, what they wanted. "My grandmother told me stories too," I said. "Mohawk stories about water spirits. She said they guard the old places. She said if you go into their territory without permission, they'll pull you down and you'll never come up." "Did she say how to get permission?" "Offerings, respect, recognition that the water belonged to them first." I looked at Carol. What if that's all this is? We've been treating Bone Hollow Creek like it's ours, building trails, bringing tourists, having people splash around in water that's sacred to something else. You think those things down there want us to ask permission? I think they want us to leave. I paused. "But I can't leave Tom." Carol was quiet. Then she said, "If you're going down tomorrow, I'm going with you." "No, it's too dangerous. You'll need a Safi, Eddie Diver." "Carol, I'm going." Her voice was firm. "You don't get to play hero alone." I wanted to argue, but I knew she was right. I'd need help, and more than that, I'd need a witness. Someone who could tell the truth if I didn't come back up. We took turns sleeping in the camp chairs. Every hour or so, I'd wake up and check the creek. Once, around 3 a.m, I saw ripples moving across the dark water. They moved upstream against the current. Impossible. Something was watching us from the deep pool. I could feel it. When dawn came, I knew what I had to do. The rescue team arrived at 8. They had cave diving equipment, specialized lights, underwater mapping gear. Rodriguez looked grim. "We're calling in state police divers," he said. "This is beyond our scope. Whatever's down there." He stopped. "Just stay out of the water until they arrive." But I was already suiting up. "Ben, what are you doing?" Rodriguez asked. "Tom's partner," I said. "I need to try one more time." "That's not protocol." "I don't care about protocol." I strapped on my tank. "He'd do it for me." Carol was already in her wetsuit. Rodriguez looked between us, saw he wasn't going to change our minds, and sighed. 30 minutes, he said. "You're not up in 30 minutes. I'm sending everyone down." We waded into the water. The sun was up now, making the surface sparkle. Beautiful. Peaceful. A lie. I put the regulator in my mouth and dove. The water was clearer this morning. I could see all the way to where the bottom dropped away. Carol swam beside me, her movements calm and professional. We dove together a dozen times. I trusted her completely. We reached the edge of the deep pool. I looked at Carol, gave her the okay sign. She returned it. Then we descended into the dark. 20 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet. The bones appeared below us, still arranged in their spiral patterns. I counted at least 5 human skulls. More animal bones than I could count. All of it placed carefully, deliberately. This wasn't random. This was ritual. Carol grabbed my arm, pointed. Movement in the deeper water, shapes circling below us like sharks. I reached into my dive bag and pulled out what I'd brought. A small, carved stone. Mohawk, belonged to my grandmother. Tobacco wrapped in cloth. 3 silver coins. Traditional offerings for water spirits. Carol stared at me through her mask. I pointed down, then held up the offerings. She understood. We descended together, 50 feet, 60 feet, 70 feet. We were going deeper than recreational diving allowed, into water that could kill us with decompression sickness if we stayed too long. The shapes came closer. I could see them clearly now, 7 of them, 8 feet tall, skin pale as mushrooms, eyes huge and black. They moved through the water with grace, with power. They surrounded us. This was it. This was where I'd die. But I'd come here for a reason. I held out the offerings with both hands, trying to remember the prayers my grandmother taught me. The words felt clumsy in my mind, half forgotten, but I said them anyway, in the old language she'd spoken. One of the creatures came closer. It moved right up to me, so close I could have touched it. Its face was almost human. Almost. The eyes were too large, the mouth too wide, the fingers too long. But there was intelligence there, understanding. It reached out with one pale hand and took the offerings. Then it turned and swam away into the darkness. The others followed, all except one. This one was smaller. It gestured for us to follow, then swam down. Deeper, into the cavern system where light couldn't reach. Carol grabbed my arm, shook her head. Too deep, too dangerous. But I had to know. I had to see. I followed the creature down. The cavern opened up into a huge underwater space. My dive light showed walls that stretched beyond sight. The water here was different, thicker somehow, darker, like swimming through liquid shadow. Carol stayed close, sit beside me. Our dive computers were beeping warnings. We were at 90 feet. We'd been under for 23 minutes. We had maybe 7 minutes before we'd need to surface or risk the bends. The creature led us around a corner into a smaller chamber, and there, arranged on a shelf of rock, were the bodies. Tom was there. I recognized his wetsuit. He wasn't moving. Beside him were 6 others, in various states of decay. The missing hikers, all of them preserved in the cold water, arranged carefully, like the bones above. This was their larder, their feeding chamber. I felt sick. Tom was dead. They'd drowned him and brought him here to eat later. All my hopes, all my stupid faith that I could somehow save him, gone. Carol grabbed my shoulder, shook me, pointed at Tom. He was moving, just barely. His hand twitched. Bubbles came from his regulator in slow, weak streams. He was alive. I swam to him fast, Carol right behind me. Tom's eyes were open but unfocused. Hypothermia, probably. Maybe nitrogen narcosis. But alive. Somehow, still alive. I checked his tank, nearly empty. He had maybe 5 minutes of air left. Carol and I each took one of his arms, started pulling him up. The creature that led us down moved to block our path. I stared at it through my mask. It stared back. This was the moment. This was where it decided if we lived or died. I pointed at Tom, pointed up, made a swimming motion. The creature didn't move. Then I did something crazy. I reached out and touched its arm. The skin was cold, smooth. I felt the muscle underneath, the bone structure that was almost human, but not quite. I looked into those huge black eyes and I thought the words as clearly as I could. Please. He's one of mine, like I'm one of the waters. We're connected. Please let me take him home. The creature tilted its head. Then it made a sound. Not words exactly, but vibrations that travel. Ebbed through the water and into my chest. I felt them more than heard them. It swam past us, gestured for us to follow. It led us not up, but deeper into the cavern. My computer screamed. Warnings. We were at 100 feet. We'd been down for 27 minutes. We needed to surface now. But I followed. What choice did I have? The creature brought us to another chamber. This one was smaller, warmer. And there, in the center, were 3 smaller creatures. Young ones. Babies. They looked like tiny versions of the adults. Big eyes, pale skin, but with proportions that were almost cute. One of them swam over to me and touched my mask with one small finger. The adult creature, the mother, I realized, made more vibrations. I understood somehow. She was showing me why they hunted here, why they took the bodies. They were feeding their young. This was their home, their territory, their right. I looked at Tom, unconscious between Carol and me, looked at the young creatures, looked at the mother. An idea formed. Crazy, impossible, but maybe the only way out. I pointed at the young, made a protective gesture with my arms, pointed up at the surface, made walking motions with my fingers, showed lots of people coming. Then I pointed at Tom, at Carol, at myself, showed us leaving, showed us keeping people away. The mother creature watched me. I couldn't read her expression, but I felt her intelligence working, understanding what I was offering. Protect your young from humans. In exchange, we take our dead and leave. No more hikers, no more divers, no more people swimming in her hunting grounds. The mother creature looked at me for a long moment. Then she reached out and touched my chest, right over my heart. The same gesture I'd made to show protection. Agreement. She swam past us, back toward the upper chamber. We followed, dragging Tom between us. My computer was screaming. We'd been down for 31 minutes at depths that could kill us. We needed to get to the surface immediately. The mother creature led us to a different passage, one that angled up more steeply. A shortcut. She'd just given us a way out. Carol and I kicked hard, pulling Tom with us, up and up, following the passage. I could see light above now, the surface, safety. We broke through into sunlight at 34 minutes. Rodriguez was in the water instantly, grabbing Tom, pulling him toward shore. Other divers took Carol and me. They hauled us onto the rocks. Tom wasn't breathing. Rodriguez started CPR. Chest compressions. Rescue breathing. 30 seconds. 1 minute. 2 minutes. Tom coughed. Water came out of his mouth. He gasped, choked, breathed. Jesus Christ, Rodriguez said. How is he alive? I didn't answer. I just lay on the rocks, breathing, alive, knowing what I'd done. I'd made a deal with the things in the water, and now I had to keep it. They airlifted Tom to the hospital. Severe hypothermia, decompression sickness, pneumonia. But alive. Against all odds, alive. He stayed in the hospital for 2 weeks. The doctors called it a miracle. Carol and I told the same story. We'd found Tom in an underwater cave system. We'd brought him up, that was all. We didn't mention the creatures, didn't talk about the bodies or the bones or the deal I'd made. What would be the point? Who would believe us? The state closed Bone Hollow Creek to all public access. Too dangerous, they said. Unexplored cave system with deadly deep water. They put up fences and warning signs. The area became restricted. I made sure it stayed that way. Every week, I hike to the creek. I check the fences, make sure the signs are up, keep people away. And I leave offerings at the water's edge. Tobacco, coins, small carved stones, traditional Mohawk gifts for water spirits. I've seen her twice more. The mother creature. She surfaces sometimes near the big boulder just for a moment, her huge eyes watching me, making sure I'm keeping my promise. I am. I've started teaching my sons about the old ways. Michael and Danny need to understand that some places belong to others, that the woods and waters were here long before people, and things lived here that never left. They need to know how to respect those places, how to give offerings, how to keep the peace. Because someday, I'll be too old to make the weekly hikes. And someone needs to keep the creatures in Bone Hollow Creek safe from humans. Keep humans safe from them. Tom never dove again. He left the Park Service, moved to Arizona, somewhere far from deep water. He doesn't talk about what happened. I don't blame him. Sometimes I wake up at 3 a.m, remembering those huge black eyes, those 2 long fingers, that cold touch on my ankle. Some things you never forget. Carol understands. She hikes with me sometimes, helps maintain the restricted area. We don't talk about it much, but sometimes standing at the edge of the creek, she'll say, "They're still down there." And I'll say, "Yeah, they are." Sarah knows something happened that day. I came home different, she says. More careful, more aware. I've tried to explain it to her, but how do you tell your wife that monsters are real? That they're not evil, just different? That you promise to protect them? Instead, I teach our sons. I show them the old prayers. I tell them grandmother's stories. I make sure they understand that the world is bigger and stranger than they think. That some places have rules we didn't make. That respect and understanding matter more than conquest. The official report says Tom survived a diving accident in an unmapped underwater cave system. It says the area is permanently closed due to extreme danger. It says nothing about creatures or feeding chambers or deals made in the dark. That's fine with me. Last week, a teenager tried to sneak past the fence, said he wanted to swim in the creek, prove he wasn't scared. I caught him before he reached the water. I showed him my badge, told him about drowning hazards and dangerous currents. Watched him walk away disappointed. Then I walked to the water's edge and left fresh tobacco and 3 silver coins. The water rippled. Not from wind, from below. She knew I'd kept my promise, and she kept hers. The people stay away. Her children are safe. The creek remains peaceful. And sometimes, late at night, when I can't sleep, I stand at my window and think about the deep places in the world. The places we don't understand. The places that remember. I think about the creatures who live there, raising their young in the dark water, hunting when they need to, existing in a world we stumbled into without permission. And I'm glad I made that deal. Because some things deserve to exist, even if they terrify us. Some places deserve to stay wild and dangerous, and some boundaries need to be respected. I learned that in the dark water of Bone Hollow Creek. And I'll keep that lesson until the day I die. The creek is still there. The creatures are still there. And I'm still keeping watch. That's my job now. Not just as a ranger, as something more. A keeper of boundaries. A guardian of the agreement between our world and theirs. I never believed in water spirits until I dove into Bone Hollow Creek. Now I believe. And I keep my promises. My name is Samuel Blackstone, but everyone just calls me Sam. I've been a ranger at Monongahela National Forest for 16 years now, and before that, I spent 8 years working coal mines in Kentucky. I know what you're thinking. Why would anyone leave mining to become a ranger? Well, my father died in a mine collapse when I was 19. After I had my own kids, I decided I wanted a job where I'd actually come home at night. These days, my main job is checking on old abandoned mines and making sure they're sealed up tight. It's important work. Every year, some kid or hiker gets curious and ends up hurt or worse. I've seen enough mining accidents to last 10 lifetimes, so I take this job seriously. It was October of 1973 when I first heard about the Dead Man's Copper Works. Stupid name, right? But it fit. The mine had been sealed since 1932, and according to the old records, 23 men died in there over the course of just 2 years. Equipment kept breaking for no reason. Men reported hearing voices in the dark. Then one day, the whole crew just walked out and never came back. The owners sealed it up, and that was that. For 41 years, nobody bothered with it. Then, hikers started calling our office. There's lights moving inside the mountain, one lady told me, and sounds like someone's drilling or banging metal. I figured it was probably just kids fooling around, maybe getting in through some crack we didn't know about. But when the reports kept coming, 6 different groups over 2 months, I knew I had to check it out. I didn't go alone. I brought Dr. Patricia Silverton, a mining engineer from the university, and Tom Braswell, an explosives expert I'd worked with before. Tom was a big guy with a calm voice who made you feel safe even when you were standing next to dynamite. Patricia was sharp as a tack and didn't believe in anything she couldn't measure with her instruments. "Sam, this is probably nothing," she said as we drove up the mountain road. "Old mines make sounds, rock settles, water drips. People's imaginations do the rest." "Probably," I agreed. But something in my gut felt wrong. The main entrance was sealed with concrete, thick as a bank vault, But there was a ventilation shaft about 100 yards away, partially collapsed but big enough for us to squeeze through. We set up our equipment, methane detectors, oxygen monitors, emergency breathing gear, everything you need to stay alive underground. "Radio check," I said into my walkie-talkie. Tom's voice crackled back. "Loud and clear." We clicked on our helmet lamps and started down. The smell hit me first, damp rock and old metal, but something else too. Something sweet and chemical that I couldn't quite place. The ventilation shaft dropped about 30 feet before connecting to the main tunnel. Our lights cut through the darkness, showing wooden support beams that looked way too good for being 40 years old. "These should be rotted through," Patricia said, running her hand along one beam. "But they're solid. That's odd." The tunnel opened up into a larger passage. Rail tracks ran along the floor, and an old ore cart sat on them like it was waiting for someone. Our footsteps echoed strange. Too loud, then too quiet, like the mountain was breathing. That's when we saw the first light. It was maybe 50 yards ahead, bobbing like a lantern, yellow and dim, moving from side to side. "Hello?" I called out. "This is Park Service. This mine is closed." The light stopped moving. Then it went out. We hurried forward, but when we got there, nothing. No person, no lantern, no sign anyone had been there at all. Just empty tunnels stretching into darkness. "Reflection," Tom said, but he didn't sound sure. "Maybe our lights bounced off something." Patricia checked air instruments. "Air quality's weird. Got some minerals here I'm not familiar with. Copper, yeah, but something else. Something I can't identify." We kept going deeper. The tunnel branched and twisted, and I marked our path with chalk on the walls. Standard safety procedure. Every 50 feet, I drew an arrow pointing back the way we came. That's when things got really strange. We found the break room about a quarter-mile in. That's the only way I can describe it. A wider section of tunnel with benches carved into the rock, a table, and lunch pails sitting on it. Metal lunch pails from the 1930s, the kind with the rounded tops. Tom picked one up and opened it. Inside was a sandwich wrapped in wax paper. The bread looked fresh. "That's impossible," Patricia whispered. It was impossible. Nobody had been in this mine for 41 years. That sandwich should have been dust. But when Tom unwrapped it, the bread was soft. The meat looked edible. It even smelled okay, if a bit stale. I knocked the lunch pail out of his hand. "Don't touch anything else. Don't eat or drink anything." "Sam, how?" "I don't know." My heart was pounding. "But we're documenting everything and getting out." Patricia started taking pictures with her camera. That's when we noticed the clocks. 3 of them, hanging on hooks driven into the rock wall. Old-fashioned wind-up clocks with brass casings. They were all running, ticking steadily, but they showed different times: 2:15, 4:47, and 11:33. "No way," Tom said. "No way those are still wound up." I reached out and touched one. The second hand kept sweeping around, tick, tick, tick. The metal was warm, like someone had just been holding it. From deeper in the mine came a sound. Bang, bang, bang. 3 hits of metal on metal, echoing through the tunnels. We froze. "That's a mining signal," I said quietly. 3 hits means all clear, resume work. "Who's down here?" Patricia's voice shook. Bang, 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 closer this time. Then the sound of something rolling, wheels on metal tracks, an ore cart moving. We turned our lights toward the sound. The tunnel ahead was empty, but the sound kept coming closer. Wheels squeaking, metal rattling, getting louder and louder until it stopped, right in front of us. But there was nothing there, just empty tunnel. Tom's breathing came fast and sharp. "We need to leave, right now." We turned to go back the way we came, and that's when I saw my chalk mark. The arrow I'd drawn pointing back toward the entrance. It now pointed deeper into the mine. "Did one of you flip this around?" My voice came out too high. They both stared at it. Nobody had touched it. I'd been watching the whole time. Patricia checked her compass. The needle spun in circles, never settling. My instruments are going haywire. The magnetic field here is all wrong. From the darkness behind us came new sounds. Picks hitting rock. Men talking, their voices low and muffled like they were coming through water. A laugh that cut off too quick. "Those are miners," Tom said. "Those are men working." We started walking fast, not quite running, but close. I drew new arrows on the walls, trying to mark our way out. The tunnel seemed longer than before, stretching on, and the sounds followed us. Boots on stone, metal clanging, voices calling out words I couldn't quite hear. Then we saw them. At first, just shadows moving at the edge of our light, but as we got closer, they got clearer. Men in old work clothes swinging picks at the rock face, except the picks passed right through the stone, never hitting, never making contact. The men moved like they were underwater, slow and jerky. One of them turned toward us. His face was gray, his eyes empty holes. He raised one hand and pointed down a side tunnel. Patricia screamed. We ran. I don't care how experienced you are, how many years you've worked underground. When you see something like that, you run. Our lights bounced crazily as we sprinted through the tunnels. Behitim, and us, came the sound of footsteps. Dozens of them, keeping pace. I nearly fell over something on the ground. When I looked down, my blood went cold. It was our equipment, the extra oxygen tank we'd left at the entrance. But we hadn't reached the entrance yet. We were still deep in the mine. "How is our gear here?" Tom gasped. Patricia grabbed my arm. "Look at the wall." Written in chalk, in handwriting, I recognized. Because it was mine. "Turn back. They don't want you to leave." I hadn't written that. I would never write that. The footsteps behind us stopped. In the silence, we heard something worse. A low, scraping sound, like someone dragging chains, and breathing, heavy and wet, coming from every tunnel at once. "The ventilation shaft," I said. "We find the shaft, and we climb out. Stay together. Don't stop for anything." We started moving again, but the tunnels had changed. Passages I didn't remember opened up on both sides. The rail tracks split and merged in ways that made no sense. And everywhere we looked, more of them. Ghost miners standing in the darkness, watching us with those empty eyes. One stepped into our path. He wore a foreman's cap and held a clipboard. His mouth moved like he was talking, but no sound came out. Then he pointed at Tom and made a mark on his clipboard. Tom went pale. Did he just check me off a list?" The foreman nodded slowly. Then he pointed at a side tunnel and started walking. After 3 steps, he turned back and gestured for us to follow. It wasn't a request. "Don't," Patricia said. "Don't go with it." But Tom was already moving, like his legs were walking without his permission. I can't stop. Sam, I can't." I grabbed his arm and pulled hard. For a second, he kept walking, dragging me with him. Then something snapped and he stumbled backward, gasping. The foreman's face twisted with anger. He raised his clipboard and slammed it against the rock wall. Bang, bang, bang. The 3-hit signal. All around us, the ghost miners stopped what they were doing and turned toward us. Dozens of them, maybe more, Philly, along every tunnel. They started walking, slow and steady, closing in from all sides. "Run," I said. "Run!" We crashed through the tunnels blindly now, taking turns at random, desperate to find any way out. The ghost miners followed, never hurrying but never stopping, always just behind us. Every time I looked back, there were more of them. Tom was breathing hard, wheezing. Can't go much farther." "You have to," I said. But I was wearing out too. We'd been down here for over an hour and the air felt wrong, thick and heavy despite what our instruments said. We stumbled into a large chamber and I nearly cried with relief. Mining equipment sat everywhere. Drills, carts, tools all neatly arranged. And in the center, a metal cage elevator. "The main shaft," Patricia gasped. "We can ride up." We ran to the elevator. The metal gate was open, and inside I could see the controls, a simple lever to go up or down. Tom stepped in first, then Patricia. I was about to follow when I saw something that made my skin crawl. A clock on the wall. 11:33. The same time as one of the clocks in the break room. And next to it, a workboard with names written in chalk. 23 names, all from the 1930s based on the old-fashioned handwriting. At the bottom, 3 new names in fresh chalk. Samuel Blackstone, Patricia Silverton, Tom Braswell. "Get in!" Tom yelled. I jumped into the elevator and slammed the gate shut. Tom pulled the lever. For a horrible second, nothing happened. Then, with a groan of metal, we started moving up. "Oh, thank God," Patricia sobbed. "Thank God. Thank God." We rose past level markers carved in the rock. 300 feet, 250 feet, 200 feet. We were going to make it. We were going to. The elevator stopped with a jerk, 150 feet down. Tom yanked the lever. Nothing. He yanked it again and again. "Come on." Then we started moving, down, back into the mine. "No!" Tom poured, landed on the controls. "No, no, no, no!" The elevator picked up speed, dropping fast, too fast. We held on as it plunged past the main level, past where we'd gotten on, going deeper than we'd been before. The rock walls blurred past until, slam, we hit bottom hard enough to knock us off our feet. The gate swung open by itself. Beyond it, a tunnel I'd never seen, lit by electric lights that hummed and flickered. And at the far end, dozens of ghost miners stood waiting. The foreman was at the front, tapping his clipboard. "We can't go out there," Patricia said. But the elevator floor was tilting, tipping us toward the door. The walls seemed to push inward, forcing us out. We had no choice. We stepped into the tunnel, and the elevator gate slammed shut behind us. When I looked back, the cage was gone. Just solid rock wall. The foreman gestured for us to follow. This time, our legs moved whether we wanted them to or not. We walked like puppets, unable to stop, marching in line with the ghost miners. They led us to a massive chamber carved from raw copper ore. The walls glowed in our lamplight, orange and red and green where the metal had oxidized. Tools lay scattered across the floor, picks, hammers, drills. The foreman pointed at them, then at the walls. His meaning was clear. He wanted us to work. "This is insane," Tom said, but he was already bending down, picking up a hammer. I can't control." Patricia grabbed a pick. I felt my hands reach for a drill without meaning to. The ghost miners spread out around us, each starting their own work. Their picks passed through the rock like mist, but ours hit solid stone, the impact jarring my arms. We worked. We couldn't stop. Hours passed. Or maybe minutes. It was impossible to tell. My arms screamed with pain. Sweat poured down my face. But I kept drilling, kept hammering, while the ghost miners worked silently beside us. "Sam," Tom gasped. "Sam, we're going to die down here." "No," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. "No, we're not." Patricia dropped her pick and fell to her knees. "I'm sorry. Sam, I'm so sorry. We should have listened." That's when I noticed her speech. The way she said "should have" sounded old-fashioned, formal, like someone from the 1930s would talk. Tom was worse. "This here copper's running real good," he said in an accent that wasn't his own. "We'll make quota for sure." "Tom, snap out of it." I grabbed his shoulders and shook him. "You're not from the 1930s. Your name is Tom Braswell. You're from West Virginia. You have a wife named Linda." His eyes focused on me. "Linda? Yeah, Linda." Modern Tom came back for a moment. "What's happening to us?" "The mine is making us like them," I said. "The longer we're here, the more we become—" I couldn't finish the sentence. Didn't want to. The foreman appeared next to me. Up close, I could see through him, the rock wall visible behind his faded body. He held out his clipboard, and I saw the work order. Date, November 3rd, 1932. Goal, 500 tons of copper ore. Current, 487 tons. They'd been 13 tons short of their quota when they died. For 41 years, they'd been trying to finish the job. "You want us to help you complete the shipment," I said. The foreman nodded. "And if we do? If we help you finish, will you let us leave?" He stared at me with those empty eyes. Then, slowly, he nodded again. I looked at Tom and Patricia. They were fading, colors in their skin turning gray, movements becoming jerky and slow. We didn't have much time. "Okay," I said. "We'll help you. But you have to promise, when it's done, we go free." The foreman extended his hand. I reached out, expecting to pass right through, but his hand was solid and cold as ice. We shook on it, and I felt something lock into place, like signing a contract written in my bones. "What did you just do?" Patricia whispered. "Made a deal," I said. "Now let's mine some copper." We worked alongside the ghosts for what felt like days. My hands bled, my back seized up. Tom collapsed twice, and each time the ghost miners just stood there, waiting until he got back up. Patricia cried while she worked, tears running down her gray face. But slowly, ton by ton, we filled the ore carts. The ghost miners loaded them onto the rail tracks and pushed them toward the elevator shaft. The foreman made marks on his clipboard, and the number climbed. 490 tons, 495 tons, 498 tons. I was swinging my pick when my radio crackled to life. "Hello? Sam? Can anyone... Is Ranger Station 5? Does anyone..." My radio. I'd forgotten all about it. The voice sounded like it was coming from another world, which I guess it was. The real world. The surface, daylight, and fresh air, and everything I'd taken for granted. I dropped my pick and grabbed the radio. "This is Sam Blackstone. We're trapped in Dead Man's Copper Works. We need..." Static roared, then cut out completely. But just hearing that voice, that connection to the outside, cleared my head like cold water. I looked around the chamber and really saw it for the first time in hours. The walls weren't glowing anymore. They were pulsing, breathing, like living tissue. The copper veins ran through the rock like arteries, and they were moving, pumping something that looked like light but felt like consciousness. The ghost miners weren't digging out ore. They were feeding the walls, making them stronger. "Patricia!" I shouted. "What is this copper? What's in it?" She blinked slowly, coming back to herself. I don't know. Elements I can't identify. Properties that don't make sense." She touched the wall and jerked her hand back. "It's warm. Rock shouldn't be warm." "It's alive," Tom said in his old-fashioned voice. "The mountain's alive, and it's hungry. Has been since the beginning." "Since when?" I demanded. "Tom, when did this start?" He turned to me with those empty eyes. "Since the first pick broke the first stone. Since the first miner died and his soul got caught in the copper. We tried to leave, tried to stop, but the mountain would let us. The mountain wanted more, always more. It's been eating us for 41 years. I looked at the foreman. "You didn't die in an accident, did you? The mountain killed you, all of you." He nodded once. "And now it wants us too. The quota. That's just to keep us here long enough to trap us forever." Another nod. "Well, I've got news for you." I picked up my drill. "I'm not dying in this mine. Not like my father, not like you." I aimed the drill at the nearest copper vein and triggered it. The bit tore into the glowing metal, and the chamber screamed, an actual scream that came from the walls, the floor, the ceiling. The ghost miners clutched their heads and fell to their knees. "Sam, what are you doing?" Patricia yelled. "The copper is alive, so we kill it." I moved to another vein and drilled again. More screaming. The lights flickered. Tom snapped back to himself. "The explosives. I still have charges in my pack." He ran to where we'd dropped our gear and pulled out sticks of dynamite. His hands were steady, no shaking, no hesitation. This was what he did best. He started setting charges along the major copper veins while the chamber thrashed around us. The ghost miners tried to stop us, but they were weak now, flickering in and out of existence. The foreman grabbed my arm, his grip strong despite his fading form. He shook his head desperately. "No, don't." "I'm sorry," I told him. "But if we destroy the copper, maybe you can finally rest." Understanding filled his empty eyes. Then something else. Relief. He let go of my arm and stepped back. The other ghost miners did the same. They wanted this. They wanted to be free. "Charges set," Tom called. "We've got 2 minutes." We ran. Behind us, the copper veins writhed like snakes, trying to close the tunnel. The mountain fought to keep us, but it was dying, losing power with every second. We raced through passages that twisted and changed, following our old chalk marks that now pointed the right way. The ventilation shaft appeared ahead. Never thought I'd be so happy to see that narrow climb. Tom went to first, then Patricia. I was halfway up when the charges blew. The explosion hit like a wave, knocking me against the rock wall. I held on as the mountain shook itself apart. Below, I could see the ghost miners standing in the main chamber, looking up at me. The foreman raised his hand in a final salute. Then they all smiled, actually smiled, and faded away like morning mist. I climbed as the shaft collapsed beneath me, rock and dirt pouring down. My hands found the surface edge just as the ground gave way completely. I pulled myself out and crawled away from the hole, gasping and coughing. Tom and Patricia were already on their feet, running toward our truck parked 100 yards away. I got up to follow them, but I looked back one more time. The entire ventilation shaft caved in with a roar like thunder. Dust exploded into the air. The ground kept shaking for another minute, then went still. Where the entrance to Dead Man's Copper Works had been, there was now just a pile of rubble and broken stone. The mountain had sealed itself. They made us see 3 different doctors. The physical exams were easy. Cuts, bruises, exhaustion. Nothing unusual for people who'd been in a mine collapse. The psychological evaluations were harder. "Tell me again what you saw down there," the psychiatrist said. I told him about the lights, the sounds, the feeling that something was wrong. I didn't mention the ghost miners or the living copper or the deal with the foreman. Patricia and Tom didn't either. We'd agreed. Some things sound too crazy to say out loud. Temporal displacement syndrome, the doctor finally decided, caused by oxygen deprivation and stress. You experienced shared hallucinations due to the unusual mineral content in the air. "Sure," I said. "That makes sense." They let us go after a week. We all went back to our regular lives, or tried to. Tom quit the explosives business and got a job at a hardware store. Patricia stopped doing mine surveys and switched to teaching. And me? I'm still a ranger, still checking on abandoned mines. But now I carry something extra. A list of mines throughout Appalachia that closed suddenly with no clear reason. There are 43 of them, maybe more. I've visited 12 so far. 8 showed the same signs. Equipment in perfect condition, strange mineral content, reports of lights and sounds from local hikers. I document everything in a private notebook that I keep locked in my truck. Nobody else would believe it anyway. Last week I got a call about an old iron mine up near Pennsylvania. Kids said they saw someone working inside, but when police checked, nobody was there. Tools left behind, all from the 1940s. I'm driving up tomorrow to take a look. My wife asked me why I keep doing this, why I don't just retire and forget about it. I told her I made a promise to my father, that I'd make sure miners were safe, even the dead ones. Some nights I still hear the sound of picks hitting stone. I wake up and check my hands, making sure they haven't turned gray. Patricia calls sometimes, usually around 3 a.m. We don't talk much. Just check that the other person is still real, still alive, still remembering. Tom hasn't called in 6 months. I drove by his house last week. He was in the backyard digging. I asked what he was doing. Building a root cellar, he said, to store vegetables. But the hole he'd dug was too deep, too narrow, more like a mine shaft than a cellar. And when I looked closer, I saw copper veins running through the dirt walls, glowing faintly in the afternoon sun. "Tom," I said carefully, "maybe you should stop digging. He looked at me with eyes that had too much empty space in them. Can't stop, Sam. We didn't finish the quota. We were 13 tons short. I got him to a hospital. They're calling it early onset dementia. Maybe it is. Or maybe the mountain got a piece of him after all. I still carry my radio everywhere, even when I'm not working. I keep it on, listening to the normal chatter of ranger stations and weather reports. It reminds me I'm here in the real world, not trapped in some ghost mine under the earth. But sometimes, late at night, when the signal gets weak, I hear other voices on the radio. Old voices using old words, calling out shift changes and ore counts. And once, just once, I heard the foreman. "Blackstone," he said through the static. "You kept your promise. Thank you." I never heard him again after that. I hope that means he's at rest now, him and all his men. But I can't be sure. The mountains are old and deep, and they remember everything. Every miner who ever went down and didn't come back. Every soul that got trapped in the dark. That's why I keep checking the mines. Someone has to make sure they stay sealed. Someone has to remember that the earth isn't just rock and dirt. Sometimes it's something else. Something that watches and waits and hungers. And if you're ever hiking in Appalachia and you see an old mine entrance, even if it's sealed, even if it looks perfectly safe, keep walking. Don't listen if you hear sounds coming from inside. Don't look if you see lights moving in the dark, because the mountain is always hungry, and it's always looking for workers to fill its quota. My name is Caleb Thornfield, and I've been a ranger for the Ozark-St. Francis National Forest for 18 years now. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand. I'm not the kind of person who believes in ghost stories. I grew up in these mountains. My daddy grew up here. I know the difference between a bear scratching on a tree and something that shouldn't exist. I've seen a lot of strange things in my time. Dead deer arranged in circles, cabins that make your skin crawl for no good reason. But I always found an explanation. Always. That's what I do. I document old homesteads, study their history, figure out why families left or what happened to them. Over 300 sites, and I've never written down anything I couldn't explain with facts and records. Until October of 1979. I'm 45 now, divorced, got 2 kids I see on weekends. I live alone in a small house near Mountain View. Most nights, I eat dinner standing up at my kitchen counter, reading through old property records and family histories. It's quiet work, safe work. The kind of job where the biggest danger is usually a copperhead sunning itself on a rock. My supervisor called me into his office on a Tuesday morning. "Got something for you, Cal," he said, spreading a topographic map across his desk. His finger landed on a spot deep in the backcountry where the contour lines bunched so close together they looked like fingerprints. "Mackenzie Homestead. We're putting a trail through that hollow next spring. Need you to survey it first, document what's there." I knew the area. Barely. It was 8 miles up an unnamed creek, accessible only on horseback or foot. The kind of place where cell phones don't work and the Forest Service doesn't bother with regular patrols. "What do we know about it?" I asked. He shrugged. "Family vanished in 1847. Property records show they just left. Cabins suppose. Sedley still standing." That wasn't unusual for the Ozarks. Lots of families came and went in those early days. Hard winters, failed crops, disease. But something about his tone made me look up. "What aren't you telling me?" He pulled out a file folder, thin as a pamphlet. "Every ranger we've sent to map that area has come back different. Won't talk about it. One guy requested a transfer to Alaska the same day he got back. Another one quit the service entirely. And you want me to go anyway? You're the best we've got at this stuff. If there's something worth preserving there, you'll document it right. If there's nothing, we'll know for sure." He looked at me over his reading glasses. "Take 3 days. Camp if you need to. Just get me a full report." I left his office with the map and the thin file folder. Inside was a single piece of paper, A property deed from 1845 showing the Mackenzie family purchased 160 acres. Husband, wife, 3 children. No death certificates. No records of them anywhere after 1847. I spent the next 2 days preparing, packed my surveying equipment, camera, notebooks. My horse, Red, was a 15-year-old gelding who'd been up every trail in the forest. I loaded up my pack horse, Daisy, with camping gear and enough food for 4 days, just in case. The morning I left was cold. Late October frost turned the grass white and made my breath fog in the air. The hollow was full of mist, thick as cotton. I could barely see Red's ears in front of me as we started up the old logging road. By noon, the mist had burned off, and I could see the forest around me. The trees were beautiful, oak and hickory turning gold and red, with pine trees so dark they looked black. Limestone cliffs rose on both sides of the creek, water trickling over rocks that were probably 1,000 years old. I'd been in these woods my whole life. I knew their sounds. Squirrels, chattering, crows calling, the whisper of wind through leaves. But as I rode deeper into that unnamed hollow, I noticed something wrong. It was too quiet. No birds, no squirrels. Even the insects seemed to have gone somewhere else. Red noticed it too. His ears kept swiveling, and he walked with his head up, alert. Horses know things we don't. They can feel when something's off. I told myself it was just the season, late October, getting cold, animals bedding down early. But I'd ridden through these mountains in every season, and I'd never heard silence like this. Around 3 in the afternoon, I found the homestead. The cabin sat in a small clearing beside the creek. It was beautiful, in a sad kind of way. Hand-hewn logs, still solid after more than 100 years. The roof had caved in on one side, but the walls stood straight. Someone had built this place to last. I tied the horses to a tree and walked around the site, taking notes. The cabin faced south, like they all did, to catch the winter sun. There was a rock-lined well, a small barn that had collapsed into itself, and a garden plot you could still see if you knew what to look for. Everything was normal. Standard 1800s homestead, abandoned but not destroyed. I took photographs, measured the walls, sketched the layout. Professional work, by the book. Then I walked around to the back of the cabin. The root cellar door was set into the hillside like they usually were. But this one was different. The wooden door frame had carvings all over it, symbols I'd never seen before, not decorations. These were deliberate, cut deep into the wood, circles with lines through them, star patterns, things that looked almost like letters, but weren't. I'd studied Appalachian folk art. These weren't the usual hex signs you saw in barns. These were something else. I pulled out my camera and photographed them. Then I grabbed the iron ring handle and pulled. The door didn't budge. I pulled harder. Nothing. It wasn't just stuck. It felt like something was holding it shut from the inside, which was impossible. Root cellar don't have locks. They're just doors over holes in the ground. I braced my foot against the frame and pulled with both hands. The door made a sound like a breath, a long, slow exhale, and suddenly flew open, sending me stumbling backward. Cold air poured out. Not just cool, actually cold, like standing in front of a freezer. And it smelled wrong. Not rotten, but green. Like fresh-cut grass and turned earth, but too strong, too alive. Stone steps led down into darkness. I'd brought a flashlight, but for some reason, I didn't want to go down there. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to close that door, get on Red, and ride back to town. But I'm a professional. I'd surveyed 300 sites. A root cellar was just a hole in the ground. I turned on my flashlight and started down the steps. 12 steps. I counted them. The temperature dropped with each one, and that green smell got stronger. At the bottom, I swept my light around and froze. The cellar was huge, bigger than the cabin above it. The walls were made of fitted stone, the kind of expert work you didn't see from simple homesteaders, and it was full. Mason jars lined shelves on every wall. Potatoes, carrots, beets, all perfectly preserved. Not rotten, not even dusty. They looked like someone had put them there yesterday, not 132 years ago. In the center of the room was a flat stone, like an altar. It had carvings on it too, vines and roots and flowers all intertwined. And around it, the vegetables were arranged in patterns, circles inside circles, lines radiating out like a sun. I stepped closer, my light catching something on the shelves. Books, leather-bound journals stacked neatly beside the jars. I picked one up and opened it. The handwriting was neat, careful, feminine. June 14th, 1846. The spirits of the roots have blessed us again. The potato harvest will be triple what we expected. I can hear them, singing in the earth. I flipped through more pages. The entries got stranger. September 3rd, 1846. The root mother spoke to me today. She wants something in return for her gifts. Something precious. December 21st, 1846. The children heard her last night. They are afraid. I told them not to be. The root mother only wants what is fair. March 15th, 1847. She is hungry. She has been dormant so long. We must feed her, or she will feed herself. The last entry was dated April 2nd, 1847. Just 2 words, written over and over until they filled the page. She's awake. She's awake. She's awake. She's awake. I heard something behind me. A soft sound, like something sliding across stone. I spun around, my flashlight beam sweeping across the shelves. The jars sat exactly where they'd been. Nothing had moved. But when I looked at the altar, one of the potatoes in the pattern had shifted. Just an inch. Just enough to notice. Old building settling, I said out loud. My voice sounded small and scared in that underground space. I watched the potatoes for a full minute. They didn't move again. I told myself to leave. Get out, write the report, recommend the site be left alone. But I needed to be thorough. I needed photographs. I raised my camera and took a picture of the altar. The flash lit up the whole cellar for a moment, and in that brief light, I saw something that made my hands go numb. The vegetables on the shelves weren't just sitting there. They had roots. Long, pale roots that had grown down from the jars and into the cracks between the stones, and those roots were connected to each other, forming a web across the entire wall. I lowered the camera slowly. All around me, in every direction, the roots were moving. Not fast, just a gentle pulse, like breathing, like a heartbeat. The temperature in the cellar dropped another 10 degrees. I backed toward the stairs, not taking my eyes off those shelves. The roots kept pulsing, kept moving, and now I could see them emerging from the dirt floor too. Thin white tendrils pushing up through the packed earth, reaching towards me. My foot hit the bottom step. The root cellar door slammed shut above me. I ran up those stairs so fast, I almost dropped my flashlight. 12 steps that felt like 100. I hit the door with my shoulder, and it didn't move. I pushed again, harder. Nothing. From below, I heard a sound like wind through trees, except there was no wind down there. Just that green smell getting stronger. And something else now. Something sweet and rotten at the same time. I braced my back against the door and pushed with my legs. The door creaked, but held. Through the gap at the bottom, I could see the roots coming up the stairs. They moved like snakes, like they were searching for something, like they were searching for me. I pushed again, screaming with the effort, and the door flew open. I tumbled out into the clearing, into blessed daylight and fresh air. Red and Daisy were going crazy. Red was rearing against his rope, eyes rolling white. Daisy was making a sound I'd never heard a horse make, a high, terrified scream. I scrambled to my feet and looked back at the cellar entrance. The roots weren't just inside anymore. They were coming out. Pale tendrils pushed through the gaps in the doorframe, reaching toward the grass. Where they touched, the grass turned brown and died. I ran to the horses, my hands shaking so bad I could barely untie them. Come on, I muttered, fumbling with Red's rope. Behind me, that wind sound got louder. It was forming words. Slow, drawn-out words in a voice that sounded like it was coming from deep underground. Stay. I got Red free and grabbed his saddle horn, ready to mount. The roots erupted from the ground between me and the horses. They came up in a wave, thick as my arm, bursting through the soil like something huge was pushing them from below. They formed a wall, blocking my path, and at the top of that wall, they wove themselves, into a shape, a face. Not human, too long, too many angles, but definitely a face, made of roots and earth, with empty spaces where eyes should be. "You opened the door, Sit," it said, and the voice came from everywhere, from the ground, from the trees, from inside my own head. "You woke me. You must stay." Red screamed and tore his rope free from my hand. He bolted, crashing through the brush toward the trail. Daisy followed, her pack bouncing and spilling my supplies across the clearing. I stood there alone, facing that thing made of roots, and I understood what had happened to the Mackenzie family. They'd fed it. Mrs. Mackenzie had made some kind of deal with whatever lived in that cellar, and when she couldn't give it what it wanted anymore, it had taken them, all of them. And now it wanted me. "I didn't mean to wake you," I said, backing away slowly. "I'm leaving. Right now." "Too late," the root face said. "I am hungry. I have been hungry for so long." The roots at my feet started wrapping around my ankles. I kicked at them, but more came. They were everywhere now, coming up through the ground faster than I could move. One wrapped around my left leg, tight as a rope. I felt it start to pull, dragging me toward the cellar entrance. I reached for my belt. I always carried a knife, a big fixed blade for cutting rope and brush. I grabbed it and started sawing at the root around my leg. It was tough, like cutting through leather, but it finally snapped. The root face screamed, not with sound, but with feeling, a wave of rage and pain that hit me like a physical force. All the roots pulled back for a moment, and I ran. I crashed through the forest, no idea where I was going. Branches whipped my face. Thorns tore my jacket. Behind me, I could hear that wind voice getting louder, angrier. "You cannot leave. You belong to the root mother now." The ground beneath my feet started moving. Roots pushed up everywhere, trying to trip me. Trees groaned and leaned inward, branches reaching down like arms. I broke through into a small clearing and stopped. Gases. Ping for air. My lungs burned. My legs felt like rubber. The forest around me had changed. The trees that were beautiful an hour ago now looked twisted and wrong. Their branches formed shapes, reaching hands, grasping fingers. And between them, I could see the roots. They formed a net, a web, connecting every tree to every other tree. This whole forest was part of it. The whole thing was alive, and it was all connected to whatever was in that cellar. I pulled out my compass with shaking hands. The needle spun in circles, useless. I tried to remember which direction I'd come from, but the trees all looked the same now. I was lost. 8 miles from the nearest trail, and I was lost. Something moved in the trees ahead of me. I raised my knife. A woman stepped out from behind an oak tree. She wore an old-style dress, the kind from the 1800s. Her hair was long and gray. Her face was pale, too pale, and her eyes were completely black. "Mrs. Mackenzie?" I whispered. She smiled, but it was wrong. Her mouth opened too wide, and I could see roots growing inside it, coming out between her teeth. "She is part of me now," the root mother said through Mrs. Mackenzie's body. "They are all part of me, and soon you will be too." More figures emerged from the trees. A man, 3 children, all with that same pale skin, those same black eyes, those same roots growing from their mouths. The Mackenzie family, or what was left of them. They started walking toward me, moving slow and steady like they had all the time in the world. I ran again. I don't know how long I ran. Maybe minutes, maybe hours. Time felt wrong in that forest. The sun was setting, but it seemed to be setting in the wrong place. Shadows stretched in directions that didn't make sense. I stumbled down a slope and found myself back at the homestead. The cabin. The cellar. No matter which way I ran, I ended up back here. The root cellar door stood wide open. That green smell poured out, stronger than ever. Inside, I could see lights. Not normal lights, but a pale glow coming from the walls themselves. Turned to run again. But the Mackenzie family was there. They formed a circle around the clearing, blocking every escape route. They didn't speak. They just watched with those empty black eyes. "There is nowhere to go," the root mother said. Her voice came from all of them at once. "This forest is mine. Every tree, every plant, every root. You cannot leave because I am everywhere." I backed toward the cabin, my mind racing. There had to be a way out. There was always a way out. My back hit the cabin wall and I felt something in my pocket, the surveying flares. I always carried them in case I got lost at night, bright red emergency flares that burned hot and long. Fire. Plants didn't like fire. I pulled out the flare and struck it against the cabin wall. It burst to life with a harsh red light, and immediately the Mackenzie family recoiled. They didn't make sounds, but I felt their pain, a wave of agony that came from the ground itself. "You don't like that, do you?" I said. I held the flare out in front of me and walked toward Mrs. Mackenzie's body. She backed away, her face twisted in silent screaming. I walked past her, past all of them, toward the tree line. Maybe if I got far enough from the cellar, I could break free of whatever power it had. But I'd only made it 20 feet when roots erupted around me again. Dozens of them, hundreds, all pulling me back toward the cellar. The flare worked. Any root that touched it withered and died, but there were too many. They grabbed my legs, my arms, my waist. I dropped the flare and hit the ground hard. The roots dragged me backward, and I clawed at the dirt, at the grass, at anything I could reach. My fingers closed around a rock, and I threw it at the nearest body. It hit Mr. Mackenzie in the chest and went right through him. He wasn't solid. He was just roots and earth shaped like a person. They dragged me to the cell, our entrance. Down the stairs, back into that cold underground chamber. The altar in the center was glowing now, pulsing with that same pale light. The roots covering the walls had grown thicker, forming patterns that hurt to look at. And beneath the altar, I could see something massive, a tangle of roots as thick as tree trunks, all twisted together into one huge central mass. That was the heart of it, the root mother's real body. The roots pulled me onto the altar and wrapped around my chest, my arms, my legs. They were so tight I could barely breathe. More roots came from the ceiling, from the walls, all reaching toward me. "You will feed me," the root mother said. "Your life, your energy, everything you are will become part of me. And then you will never be alone. You will be part of the forest forever." A root touched my face, gentle as a finger. Where it touched, my skin went numb. I felt something draining out of me. Not blood, but something else, something deeper. My vision started to blur. I could feel the root mother's presence in my mind now, cold and ancient and so hungry. She'd been here for centuries, maybe longer, sleeping in the earth, waiting for people to come and feed her. Mrs. Mackenzie hadn't summoned her. She'd just been foolish enough to try to use her. My hand brushed against my pocket. My fingers found 2 more flares. With the last of my strength, I pulled them out, struck them both against the stone altar. They burst to life, inches from that massive tangle of roots beneath the altar. The root. Mother screamed. Not in my head this time. This was a real scream, coming from the earth itself. The whole cellar shook. Cracks spread through the stone walls. I shoved the flares into the root mass and rolled off the altar. The roots that had been holding me pulled away, retreating from the fire. I grabbed my backpack, somehow still there, and pulled. It out my camping fuel. The metal bottle was dented but intact. I splashed the fuel all over the root mass and threw the bottle into the flames. The explosion knocked me back against the stairs. Fire spread through the underground chamber, catching on the roots that covered every surface. They burned fast, faster than wood, and the screaming got louder. I ran up the stairs. Behind me, the ceiling started to collapse. Stone blocks fell, crushing the altar. The whole hillside was shaking, and I could feel it. The root mother, dying. Feel her rage and terror and pain. I burst out into the clearing and kept running. Behind me, the ground was cracking open. Trees were falling, crashing down as the root system that connected them all withered and died. I ran until my legs gave out, fell face first into dead leaves and just lay there, gasping. When I finally looked back, the whole clearing had collapsed. The cabin, the cellar, everything. Just a huge sinkhole where the homestead used to be. And around it, in a perfect circle maybe a quarter-mile wide, every plant was dead, brown, lifeless. I'd killed her. I'd actually killed her. I found Red and Daisy 3 miles away near the main trail. They were exhausted but unhurt. It took me 2 days to walk out of those mountains because I could barely stand and my hands shook so bad I kept dropping the reins. When I finally made it back to the ranger station, I told them there'd been some kind of cave-in. A gas pocket underground maybe. Something that caused the whole site to collapse. I showed them the photos I'd taken before going into the cellar. Just pictures of an old homestead. None of the photos from inside the cellar came out. The film was blank, like I'd never taken them at all. They sent a team to investigate. Found the dead zone, the collapsed sinkhole. Soil samples showed nothing unusual. No gas, no chemicals, no explanation for why every plant in that area had died at the exact same time. The official report called it an unexplained environmental anomaly. That was 6 months ago. The forest is growing, back now. The dead zone is turning green again. But there's something wrong with the new growth. The plants are too healthy, too aggressive. The grass grows a foot in a week. The trees put out leaves in January. And at night, if you stand at the edge of that clearing, you can hear something. Not wind, not animals. Something else. A whisper in the earth, a pulse in the roots. I requested a transfer. They're sending me to Arizona next month. Desert work, no forests, no root cellars. I can't be around plants anymore. Even my house plants make my skin crawl. Last week, I woke up because I could feel something growing inside me. Roots pushing through my chest, wrapping around my heart. It wasn't real. The doctor said it was anxiety, panic attacks. But I felt it. I still feel it sometimes, late at night. I've been researching old folk tales, Appalachian magic, stories about root witches and forest mothers. There are more stories than I expected, lots more. All through the Ozarks, the Smokies, the Blue Ridge. Stories about people who went into the forest and never came back. About homesteads that were abandoned overnight. About plants that were too healthy, too aggressive, too alive. I think Mrs. Mackenzie made a deal with something old. Older than the mountains, older than people. Something that's been sleeping in the earth since before we had words for it. And I think I only killed one of them. If you're reading this and you live in the mountains, do me a favor. If you find an old homestead with a root cellar, don't open it. Don't care how curious you are. Don't care what symbols are carved on the door. Just walk away. Because some things aren't meant to be disturbed. Some things should stay buried. And if you do open it, if you're foolish enough or unlucky enough to wake what's sleeping down there, remember what I learned. Fireworks, but you have to burn it all. Every root, every piece. Leave nothing alive, because if you don't, it'll find you. Maybe not today, maybe not this year, but it'll find you. And when it does, it'll drag you down into the earth. And you'll become part of it forever. Part of the roots and the soil and the endless, hungry darkness. I still have nightmares about those black eyes. About Mrs. Mackenzie's smile. About the feeling of roots wrapping around my chest, pulling me down into the cold earth. Sometimes I wake up and find dirt under my fingernails, even though I haven't been outside. Sometimes I can hear her voice, whispering, in the back of my mind. You can't kill me. I am the earth. I am the forest. I am everywhere roots grow. And the worst part? I think she's right. My name is Ezra Whitmore, and I've been a park ranger at Shenandoah National Park for 15 years. I know every trail, every cliff face, every dark hole in these mountains. My specialty is cave rescue, pulling people out of tight spots when they get themselves stuck underground. I've done it 127 times without losing anyone, until October 1971. People think being a ranger is all sunshine and helping tourists find bathrooms. But caves are different. They're cold and silent, and they don't care if you're scared. You go in when someone needs help, no matter what. I'm 42 now. My wife, Sarah, died in a climbing accident 7 years ago. She was teaching kids about the outdoors when her harness failed. After that, I couldn't just sit around. I joined the Park Service to do what she would have wanted, keep people safe out here. I never believed the old stories. You hear them all the time in these mountains. The locals talk about hollow folk living inside the rocks. Cherokee legends warn about caves that breathe. Old-timers say some mountains have spirits that don't like visitors. I always figured it was just campfire talk. People getting spooked in the dark, hearing wind through cracks and thinking it's ghosts. Then 3 cavers went missing in Whisper Cave. They were graduate students from Virginia Tech, experienced, careful, smart. They'd been mapping new passages, which is normal work. You go in, you measure, you sketch, you come out. Simple. Except they didn't come out. Their truck sat in the parking area for 2 days before someone called it in. That's when I got the call. I grabbed Tom Millfield, my backup ranger, and Dr. Rebecca Stone, a volunteer spelunker who knew caves better than anyone. Rebecca taught geology and spent more time underground than above it. Tom was young but solid, 26, strong as an ox, never panicked. We checked our gear twice. In what 971, we didn't have fancy equipment. We had carbide headlamps that burned acetylene gas to make light. We had manila rope, mechanical ascenders, and basic radios that barely worked underground. That was it. Whisper Cave sits 2,000 feet up the mountainside. You have to climb through old forest just to reach the entrance. The trees there are huge and twisted, their roots grabbing at the rocks like fingers. Even in daylight, it feels darker than it should. The cave mouth was a crack in the limestone, just wide enough to squeeze through sideways. Cold air poured out of it, smelling like minerals and something else, something stale. "You feel that?" Tom asked, shivering. "Just cave air," I said. "Always cold." But he was right. Something felt wrong. We squeezed through the entrance one by one, our carbide lamps throwing jumping shadows on the wet stone. The cave opened up after 20 feet, turning into a proper passage about 6 feet high. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness ahead. That's when we found the first strange thing. The missing caver's equipment was laid out on the cave floor in perfect geometric patterns. Ropes arranged in spirals, carabiners in straight lines, a compass sitting dead center of a circle made from chalk marks. "What the hell?" Tom picked up one of the ropes. "Why would they do this?" Rebecca knelt down, studying the patterns. Her face looked pale in the lamplight. "They wouldn't. This is deliberate, like a design." "Maybe they were marking their route," I suggested, but even I didn't believe it. We moved deeper. The cave had that special kind of silence, not quiet but absent, like sound itself didn't want to be there. Then I noticed something wrong with my ears. When Tom spoke ahead of me, his voice came from behind. When Rebecca called out to my left, the echo came from my right. The cave was twisting sound around, making it impossible to tell where anything was. "Testing, testing," I said into my radio. Static crackled back. Then whispers. Soft voices speaking words I couldn't understand, layered under the static, like they were trapped in there. "You guys hear that?" I asked. Tom nodded, his face tight. "What language is that?" "Turn it off," Rebecca said. "Something's interfering with the signal." We clicked off our radios and moved forward using hand signals. The passage sloped down, taking us deeper into the mountain. The walls were smooth limestone, worn by water over millions of years. But every 50 feet or so, we'd find fresh scratch marks, long gouges in the stone, too regular to be natural. They looked almost like writing. Tom ran his fingers over them. What could do this? The rock's hard as concrete. We reached the 400-foot level where the missing cavers had been mapping. The passage opened into a chamber about the size of a school gym. Our lights couldn't reach the ceiling. That's when the temperature dropped. I mean, really dropped. 1 second I was fine. The next, my breath was coming out in white clouds. The moisture in my beard started to freeze. "That's not right," Rebecca said, her teeth chattering. "Cave temperature should be constant, always 55 degrees year-round. That's basic cave science." But our thermometer read 25 degrees, below freezing, in a place that should never change temperature. My carbide flame flickered, then turned blue. I've been using carbide lamps for years. The flame is always yellow-orange. Always. Blue flame means something else is burning, different gas, different fuel. but there was no gas down there. At least none that should exist. We need to find those students and get out, I said. Tom pointed across the chamber. Look. A helmet sat embedded in the cave wall. Not on it. In it. The limestone had grown around the plastic like the rock was soft clay, then hardened again. The helmet belonged to one of the missing cavers. I could see the Virginia Tech sticker on it. That's impossible, Rebecca whispered. Rock doesn't do that. It defies. Aches millions of years for limestone to form. This is... A knock echoed through the chamber. Then another. Then another. Knock, 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 coming from inside the walls. We froze, listening. The knocks followed a pattern. 3 slow, 2 fast, 3 slow, over and over, like someone tapping out a code. Hello? Tom shouted. Can you hear us? The knocking stopped. Then it started again, louder, from a different wall. Then another wall. Then above us, below us, surrounding us, coming from the stone itself. We're leaving, I said. Now. We turned back toward the passage we'd entered through. It wasn't there. Where there should have been an opening, there was solid wall, smooth limestone, like it had always been that way. That's the wrong way, Tom said. We came from... He spun in a circle, confused. So did I. The chamber looked the same in every direction. No passages, no openings, just walls closing in. There. Rebecca pointed to a crack in the rock, barely wide enough for a person. That must be it. But it wasn't. I knew it wasn't. We'd come through a proper passage, not a crack. We squeezed through anyway. What choice did we have? The crack opened into another passage I didn't recognize. The walls were covered in those strange scratch marks, flowing like writing, telling some story we couldn't read. I've been in this cave 6 times, Rebecca said. This passage isn't on any map. Tom suddenly stopped walking. He stood completely still, staring at nothing. Tom? I touched his shoulder. He didn't respond. His eyes were wide, looking at something I couldn't see. Tom! I shook him. He gasped, stumbling backward. Did you see it? See what? The person. In the wall. They walked right through the rock, Ezra. Right through it like it wasn't even there. There's no one here, Rebecca said gently. You're seeing things. The cold, the stress. I'm not crazy. Tom grabbed my arm. It was a person, sort of. They were hollow, like you could see through them, and they moved inside the stone. That's when we heard the voice. Help! Me! It came from everywhere and nowhere. A man's voice, muffled, like someone shouting through thick walls. Help me, please! I'm stuck! I can't get out! Where are you? I shouted back. In the wall. I'm in the wall. It won't let me go. I pressed my ear against the limestone. The voice was clearer there, coming from inside the rock itself. Who are you? David. David Chen. From Virginia Tech. Please, you have to get me out. I've been here for days. I can't move. I'm trapped inside the stone. My blood went cold. David Chen was one of the missing cavers. How did you get in there? Rebecca asked, her scientific mind still trying to find logic. They pulled me in, the hollow ones. They live in the rock. They move through it like water. They grabbed me during sleep and pulled me through. Now I'm part of it. Please, please get me out. I didn't know what to say. How do you pull someone out of solid rock? Tom started backing away. This isn't real. This isn't happening. Tom, stay close. But he was already running, disappearing into the darkness beyond our lights. Tom! I chased after him. The passage split into 3 directions. I had no idea which way he'd gone. Tom, answer me! Nothing. Rebecca caught up to me, breathing hard. We have to find him. We searched for 3 hours. We called his name until our voices were raw. We checked every side passage, every chamber, every crack. Finally, we heard him. Not his voice, his radio, crackling to life even though we'd all turned them off. Help! Tom's voice came through, distant and strange. I don't know where I am. The walls keep moving. Every time I turn around, the passage is different. And I can see them now. The hollow people. They're everywhere, watching from inside the rock. Their eyes shine like mirrors. They want me to join them. They keep reaching out. The radio went dead. We never found him. Not then. Rebecca and I were alone in a cave that was changing around us. Every passage we'd marked seemed to lead somewhere new. Chalk arrows we'd drawn on the walls now pointed at solid rock. The scratches in the stone were multiplying, spreading like veins. This violates every law of physics, Rebecca muttered. She was clinging to science like a life raft. Caves don't change. Rock doesn't move. There has to be an explanation. The explanation is we need to get out before we end up like Tom. We tried retracing our steps. Everything looked familiar and wrong at the same time. Passages that should go up went down. Chambers we'd passed through once now had different shapes. That's when we heard the singing. Not words, just humming. A low, resonant sound that made my bones vibrate. It came from ahead, from behind, from the walls themselves. Rebecca grabbed my arm. Do you see them? I looked where she was pointing. Figures moved in the walls. I could see them clearly now, human-shaped shadows sliding through solid limestone like it was fog. They had no features, just outlines. Hollow spaces in the shape of people. One drifted close to us, and I could see through it into the rock beyond. Its head turned toward me. Where eyes should be, there were empty pits that somehow still watched. My carbide lamp flickered. The flame grew brighter, and the figure recoiled, pulling back into the stone. The light, I said. They don't like the light. Rebecca quickly adjusted her lamp to maximum brightness. The figures retreated, but they didn't leave. They circled us in the walls, staying just outside our light's reach. We kept moving, trying every passage that looked like it might lead up. But the cave had different plans. A new chamber opened ahead, bigger than anything I'd seen in 15 years of cave rescue. The ceiling disappeared into blackness hundreds of feet up, and the walls were full of people, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, trapped in the limestone like flies in amber. Some were just bones, some looked fresh. All were perfectly preserved, frozen in, the moment they were pulled in. I recognized faces from missing person reports, hikers who'd vanished decades ago, cavers who'd never returned, a girl in a 1950s dress, a man in Civil War uniform, and there, embedded near the floor, were the 3 Virginia Tech students. Their eyes were open. Their mouths moved silently, trying to speak. Rebecca fell to her knees and started throwing up. One of the students, David Chen, the one who'd spoken to us, was still partly conscious. His lips moved, and I heard his voice echo from somewhere in the rock. Run. They're coming. They're bringing us all together. They want to add you to the collection. The hollow figures emerged from the walls, not 1 or 2, dozens of them. They took shape in the open air, becoming more solid. I could see details now, clothes from different eras, different faces that were somehow empty. They moved with purpose, surrounding us. One reached for Rebecca. Its hand passed right through her jacket like she wasn't there. But when it pulled back, part of her went with it. She screamed as her arm started turning gray and translucent. I shoved my carbide lamp directly at the hollow person's face. The flame burned bright, and the figure shrieked, a sound like grinding stone, and retreated into the wall. Rebecca's arm returned to normal. She was crying, clutching it. We have to fight them, I said. How? They're not even real. They're not solid. But they were becoming solid. The more they emerged from the rock, the more physical they became. I could see it happening, going from shadow to something almost human. I grabbed a loose rock and threw it at one. The rock passed straight through and clattered against the far wall. They phase, Rebecca said, her scientist brain working even in terror. They exist in multiple states. In the rock, they're part of it. Out of the rock, they're partially here. So how do we stop them? The light. It forces them to be solid. When they're solid, they're vulnerable. I gathered every carbide lamp we had, ours and the ones from the missing cavers' abandoned gear. I lit them all, creating a circle of bright flame around us. The hollow figures couldn't pass through. They circled outside the light, growing more agitated. The humming sound became a shriek. "Now what?" Rebecca asked. "Now we run." We grabbed the lamps and moved, keeping them pointed outward. The hollow people followed us through the walls, pacing us, waiting for the lights to fail. We found a vertical shaft, a natural chimney in the rock that led upward. It was our only chance. "Can you climb?" I asked Rebecca. She nodded, though her hands were shaking. I went first, wedging my back against one wall and my feet against the other, working my way up. Rebecca followed. We held the carbide lamps in our teeth, praying they wouldn't go out. 50 feet up, 100 feet. The hollow figures climbed with us, moving through the rock around us. Hands reached out, grabbing at our legs, trying to pull us into the stone. Rebecca screamed as one caught her ankle. Her foot started turning gray, merging with the rock. I climbed down 3 feet and shoved my lamp against the figure's face. It released her, and we kept climbing. My arms were burning. My back felt like it was breaking. But I could see something above, a lighter patch of darkness. The entrance, 200 feet, 250. A hollow person emerged directly in front of me, materializing out of the wall. Its empty eyes stared into mine. Its mouth opened, revealing nothing inside, just darkness and stone. "You belong here now," it said in a voice like grinding gravel. "You've gone too deep. You've seen too much. Join us. Join us in the stone forever." I didn't think. I just swung my lamp like a weapon. The flame caught it full in the face, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw the person it used to be. A young man, terrified, screaming silently as he burned. Then it was gone, pulled back into the rock. We burst through the cave entrance as dawn light hit the mountainside. The hollow figures stopped at the opening, unable or unwilling to follow into sunlight. They watched us from the darkness, their empty eyes reflecting our lamplight. Rebecca collapsed in the pine needles. She was shaking so hard her teeth clattered. I pulled her away from the entrance, away from that dark hole in the mountain. "Tom," she whispered. "We left Tom. Tom's gone." No, he's still in there. We heard him. We have to—" "He's gone," I said firmly. "He's in the walls now, like the others." She started crying then, real crying, the kind that comes from somewhere deep. I held her while she sobbed, watching the cave entrance for any sign of movement. That's when I heard it again. Tom's voice floating out of the cave. "Ezra, is that you? I found a way out. I'm okay. I just need you to come back down and help me. I can't climb alone. Please, Ezra, please don't leave me." It sounded exactly like Tom. Same voice, same way of talking. But I'd been a ranger for 15 years. I knew what was real and what wasn't. "That's not Tom," I told Rebecca. "How do you know?" "Because Tom never called me Ezra. He always said sir or boss. Always." The voice changed. The tone went flat, inhuman. "Come back. You must come back. You know too much. You've gone too deep. You belong with us now, in the stone. Forever." I picked up Rebecca and carried her down the mountain. We made it to the parking area just as other rangers arrived. They found us covered in limestone dust, Rebecca catatonic, me babbling about hollow people in the walls. They found Tom's body 2 days later. The rescue team went in with floodlights and modern gear. They found him in a chamber we'd never seen, embedded in the wall up to his chest. His eyes were open. His mouth moved silently, but he was already more stone than man. They couldn't get him out. The limestone had grown around him like he'd been there for years, not hours. The Park Service sealed Whisper Cave with 3 tons of concrete and steel bars. They called it a cave-in, said the structure was unstable. They blamed the deaths on bad luck and poor preparation. But I knew the truth. Rebecca spent 6 months in a psychiatric hospital. She never went underground again. Last I heard, she was teaching at a community college in Florida, as far from mountains as she could get. I developed tremors in my hands, couldn't hold tools steady anymore, had panic attacks in enclosed spaces. The Park Service let me retire early with full benefits. They were kind about it, but I knew they wanted me gone, wanted me to stop talking about what I'd seen. But I couldn't stop. I started researching cave disappearances throughout the Appalachian Mountains. Once you know what to look for, the pattern is obvious. Experienced cavers vanishing in deep systems, bodies found embedded in walls, strange scratch marks in the limestone, reports of figures moving through solid rock. It goes back centuries. The Cherokee called them stone walkers. The Monacan tribes warned their children never to enter the breathing caves where spirits lived. Old miners' journals from the 1800s describe workers who joined with the mountain and were never seen again. The Hollow people have been here longer than us. Maybe they've always been here. Maybe they are the mountain, in some way we can't understand. I mapped every sealed cave in Virginia, then West Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky. All through Appalachia, there are caves marked with hazard warnings that don't quite make sense. Geological instability in stable rock, gas leaks where no gas should be, structural concerns in caves that have stood for millennia. All of them sealed, all of them hiding the same thing. It's been 3 years now. I'm 45, living alone in a cabin near the park. I don't sleep well. When I do sleep, I dream of being underground, of feeling stone growing around my body, of becoming part of the mountain forever. Sometimes I still hear Tom's voice. Late at night, when the wind comes down from the mountains, I hear him calling my name. Not from the sealed cave, that's miles away, but from other caves, other holes in the earth. His consciousness is spreading, trapped in the limestone network that runs beneath these mountains. And he's not alone in there. David Chen calls to me too, and others. Dozens of voices. Hundreds maybe, all trapped in the stone, all aware, all waiting. The Park Service thinks I'm crazy. Other rangers avoid me. They smile and nod and change the subject when I try to warn them. But I keep warning anyway. I've taken to marking caves myself. Nothing official. The Park Service would stop me if they knew. I leave small symbols on trees near cave entrances. Warnings that look like trail markers but mean something else to those who understand. Stay out. Don't go deep. The Hollow people are waiting, because they are waiting. I've seen evidence they're expanding, using natural tunnels and old mining shafts to connect their territories. A cave disappearance in Virginia last month, 2 more in Tennessee. A caving club in Kentucky found scratch marks in a system that's been mapped for 50 years. The marks weren't there before. I spend my days hiking the mountains, checking caves, watching for signs. The rangers think I'm just a broken old man reliving his trauma. Maybe I am. But I'm also the only one who knows the truth. The Hollow people are patient. They've been collecting us for generations, adding our consciousness to their stone galleries, building something in the deep places, some kind of collection, some kind of purpose we can't comprehend. And there's nothing we can do to stop them. You can seal the entrances. You can forbid exploration. You can pretend they don't exist. But the caves go deeper than you can imagine. The limestone network connects beneath our feet, a vast honeycomb of passages and chambers. The Hollow people move through it all, waiting for the next curious soul to venture too far. I keep a carbide lamp by my bed now. Old-fashioned, same kind I used that day in Whisper Cave. Every night I light it before I sleep, and I keep it burning until dawn. The flame keeps them away, mostly, but sometimes I wake in the darkness and see shadows moving in the walls of my cabin, hollow spaces in the shape of people watching me from within the wood and stone, testing the boundaries, waiting for the light to fail. And I know, deep in my bones, that one day it will. One day my light will go out, and the Hollow people will come for me. They'll pull me back into the mountain where I belong, where I've always belonged since the moment I went too deep into Whisper Cave. I'm already marked, already claimed. I'm just not hollow yet. So I'm telling you this story as a warning. If you're thinking about exploring caves in the Appalachian Mountains, especially the deep systems, the unmapped passages, the old sealed entrances, don't. Stay in the sunlight. Stay where the stone is solid and the walls don't move. Because in the deep places, in the darkness beneath the mountains, the hollow people are waiting. They're always waiting. And they have all the time in the world. My name is Jacob Mountain View, but everyone just calls me Jake. I've been a ranger with the Great Smoky Mountains National Park for 20 years now, and before that I did 8 years as military police. I've seen a lot in my time: poachers, lost hikers, the occasional bear attack. I've walked into armed camps of moonshiners deep in these mountains and talked my way out without firing a shot. I know these hills like the back of my hand, and I know the people who live in them even better. I grew up in East Tennessee, right on the edge of these mountains. My granddaddy made moonshine back in the day, before it was so illegal the federal boys got involved. I understood the old ways, respected them even. The mountain folk weren't criminals in their hearts. They were just doing what their families had done for generations. But the law is the law, and wearing this ranger badge means I have to enforce it, even when my heart pulls the other way. I'm telling you all this so you understand. I'm not some superstitious fool. I don't believe in ghost stories or mountain magic. At least I didn't. It was October 1965 when everything changed. We got word about a moonshine operation up in Devil's Backbone Hollow, a remote spot near Cataract Falls that even the old-timers avoided. The informant said this wasn't your typical family still. They were talking about an industrial operation, production on a scale nobody had seen before. And there was something else, something that made even hardened mountain men nervous to talk about. "The shine ain't right," one old-timer told me, looking over his shoulder like something might be listening. "People who drink it, they change. We've had 3 men go missing after visiting that hollow." I figured he was just spinning tales to scare off the law, but the missing persons reports were real. 3 men in 2 months, all last seen heading toward Evil's Backbone Hollow. That was enough to get the federal boys interested. We planned the raid for dawn on October 15th. My team consisted of 4 federal agents from Knoxville and a local sheriff's deputy named Tom Williams who knew the back trails. Tom was a good man, steady and smart. He had a wife and 2 little girls, and he was only 3 months from retirement. "You sure about this, Jake?" Tom asked me the night before. We were checking our gear in the ranger station. "I've heard some strange talk about that hollow." "Strange how?" I asked. He was quiet for a moment, his weathered face thoughtful. "My Cherokee grandmother used to tell stories about certain places in these mountains, places where the old spirits still lived, places we weren't supposed to go. Devil's Backbone was one of them." "Your grandmother tell you why?" "Something about burial grounds, sacred sites. She said the old ones made a deal with the mountain spirits, protection in exchange for respect. Anyone who disturbed those places..." He trailed off, shaking his head. "But that's just old stories, right?" I clapped him on the shoulder. "Just old stories, Tom. Get some sleep. We head out at 4 a.m. But I didn't sleep much that night. Something about the way Tom had looked when he mentioned those spirits, like he half believed it himself, kept nagging at me. We started hiking at 4 in the morning, using an old trail that wasn't on any official maps. Tom led the way with his flashlight, moving quiet as a ghost through the pre-dawn darkness. The federal agents, Morrison, Chen, Rodriguez, and Baker, followed in single file. I brought up the rear, watching our backs. The October air was cold enough to see our breath, and a heavy fog had settled into the valleys. By the time we reached the ridge overlooking Devil's Backbone Hollow, the sun was just starting to lighten the eastern sky, but the fog was so thick we could barely see 30 feet ahead. "There," Tom whispered, pointing down into the hollow. "Smoke." He was right. Even through the fog, I could see thin wisps of smoke rising from somewhere deep in the valley. We made our way down carefully, weapons ready. The federal agents had automatic rifles, while Tom and I carried our service revolvers. The smell hit us first, that sweet, sick smell of fermenting mash. Then we heard it, water dripping, the soft bubble of something cooking. We emerged from the fog into a clearing that made my jaw drop. I'd seen moonshine operations before, but nothing like this. There were 6 massive copper stills, each one at least 8 feet tall, arranged in a half circle around a natural spring. Behind them, a cave entrance had been carved wider, and I could see rows and rows of clay jugs disappearing into the darkness. The equipment was immaculate, almost beautiful, polished copper that caught the dim morning light. But nobody was there. "Federal agents!" Morrison shouted anyway. "Come out with your hands up!" Nothing. Just the sound of water dripping and our own breathing. "Fires are still warm," Chen said, kneeling by one of the stills. "They were here maybe an hour ago." That's when I noticed something odd. Mixed in with the modern copper stills were older pieces of equipment. Really old. Cast iron pots with strange markings, wooden barrels that looked hand-carved with symbols I didn't recognize. "Jake!" Tom called from the cave entrance. His voice sounded strange. "You need to see this." I walked over to where he stood with his flashlight pointed into the cave. The beam illuminated hundreds of jugs, each one marked with symbols instead of the usual batch numbers. But what caught my eye was the faint glow coming from some of them. "Is that—" Rodriguez started. "Moonshine doesn't glow," I said, moving closer. But this did. A soft, pale blue light came from inside maybe a dozen of the jugs, like foxfire or swamp gas, but contained in the liquid itself. Morrison, being the hothead he was, grabbed one of the glowing GS before I could stop him. "Let's see what we're dealing with." He pulled the cork and sniffed it. "Smells normal, like corn whiskey." "Don't—" I started, but he'd already taken a sip. "Morrison, you idiot, that's evidence," Baker snapped. Morrison coughed, then laughed. "Smooth, real smooth. Got a kick like a mule, though." He blinked hard, shaking his head. "Whoa! Strong stuff." "Put it down and step back," I ordered. Something about the way he was looking at that jug made my skin crawl. He corked it and set it down, but his hands were shaking. Yeah, okay." He wiped his mouth. "Jake, I feel weird." "Weird how?" "Hot. Really hot." He started unbuttoning his jacket, even though it was maybe 40 degrees out. His eyes looked different. The pupils were dilated huge, like he'd been staring into darkness. "Chen, Rodriguez, secure the perimeter," I said. "Tom, help me with Morrison." We grabbed Morrison's arms, and I was shocked by how hot his skin felt even through his clothes. It was like touching a fever patient. "Let go of me," Morrison said, but his voice sounded wrong, deeper. The accent was different, not his usual Tennessee drawl, but something older, stranger. "We need to get him out of here," Tom said. "Now." Morrison jerked away from us with strength that didn't make sense. He was a slim guy, maybe 160 pounds, but he threw both of us back like we were children. I hit the ground hard, the wind knocked out of me. When I looked up, Morrison was standing in the middle of the clearing, and something was very, very wrong with him. His back was ramrod straight, his head tilted at an angle that looked painful, and his eyes, God help me, his eyes were glowing with that same pale blue light. "This place is protected," Morrison said. But it wasn't Morrison's voice anymore. It was deeper, older, and the words came out in a rhythm that didn't sound quite human. "You have trespassed on sacred ground." Baker raised his rifle. "Morrison, stand down." Morrison, or whatever was wearing Morrison, laughed. Then he moved. I've seen some fast people in my time. I've seen soldiers and criminals move when their life depended on it. But Morrison moved like water, like wind, like something that didn't need to follow the normal rules. 1 second he was 20 feet away, the next he was on Baker, and Baker was screaming. Baker went down hard, blood spraying from his throat. Morrison stood over him, and I saw that his hands had somehow become sharp, like his fingernails had grown into claws. That wasn't possible. That wasn't real. But Baker was dying, and that was very real. "Shoot him!" Rodriguez yelled, and both he and Chen opened fire. The bullets hit Morrison. I saw them hit him, saw the impacts on his chest and shoulder. But he didn't go down. He didn't even slow down. He turned toward them with that terrible smile and started moving again. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing Tom's arm. "Run now!" We ran. Behind us, I heard more gunshots, then screaming. Chen's voice, high and terrified, cut off suddenly. Rodriguez kept firing until his rifle clicked empty. Then he was running too, crashing through the underbrush behind us. The fog had gotten thicker, or maybe it was something else because I couldn't see more than 10 feet ahead. Tom was right beside me, breathing hard. We could hear Rodriguez somewhere behind us, and then we heard other sounds. Footsteps, lots of them, all around us in the fog. "There's more of them," Tom gasped. "Jake, there's more." He was right. Through the fog, I could see shapes moving. People-shaped, but wrong somehow. They moved too smoothly, too quiet. And their eyes, all of them had those glowing blue eyes. We changed direction, heading uphill toward where we'd left our vehicles. Rodriguez caught up with us, his face pale as death. "Baker and Chen?" I asked, though I already knew. "Dead." Morrison tore them apart. "Jake, what the hell is happening?" "I don't know," I said, "but we need to get to the trucks." We made it, to the ridge where we'd parked, but my heart sank. Both trucks had their tires slashed, their radios smashed. Someone, or something, had known exactly what to destroy. "Plan B," Tom said, pulling out his handheld radio. "We call for backup and—" The radio was dead. So was mine. So was Rodriguez's. "They're hurting us," I realized. "They want us to go somewhere specific." "Where?" Rodriguez asked. As if in answer, the fog parted slightly, showing a path deeper into the mountains. Away from civilization. Away from help. "We don't have a choice," Tom said quietly. "If we stay here, they'll pick us off." So we went where they wanted us to go. The path led to another cave, bigger than the one in the hollow. We ducked inside just as the rain started, a sudden violent downpour that came from nowhere. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in as many seconds. "That's not natural," Rodriguez said, shivering. "None of this is natural." Inside the cave, we found more jugs, more of that glowing moonshine. And on the walls, painted in something that might have been ochre or might have been blood, were symbols. Cherokee writing, I thought, though I couldn't read it. "They're outside," Tom said from the cave entrance. "A lot of them." I looked. Through the rain, I could see figures standing in a circle around the cave. Maybe 20 of them. They didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there with their glowing eyes fixed on us. Then one of them stepped forward, and I recognized him. Not Morrison. Morrison was there too, standing in the rain like it didn't bother him. But the man in front was someone else. Someone I'd seen in old photographs. "That's Samuel Whitaker," Tom breathed. "Jake, that's impossible. Samuel Whitaker disappeared 30 years ago." The man, Samuel's body anyway, smiled. When he spoke, it was in a language I didn't understand at first. Cherokee, I realized. But then he switched to English. 20 years you've walked these mountains, Jacob Mountain View," he said. 20 years, and you've shown respect. You've been fair to our people. That's the only reason you're still alive." "What are you?" I asked. "We are the old ones, the spirits who made a bargain with the first people of these mountains. Protection for respect. Sacred ground for sacred ground. Your government wants to build a road through this hollow, through our burial grounds. We cannot allow it. So you possess people? Kill federal agents? We protect what must be protected. The moonshine is our tool. It allows us to inhabit the living, to walk in the world again. But we only take those who trespass with harmful intent." I thought about Baker and Chen, about Morrison, about all the people who'd disappeared. "And you want us to—" I started. "Go back," the spirit said through Samuel's mouth. "Tell your government the raid failed. Tell them the moonshiners escaped. Tell them anything you want, but tell them to leave this hollow alone. And if we don't? Samuel's body gestured to the circle of possessed people around us. Then you join us. Your bodies become vessels. You forget everything you were and become something else. Tom grabbed my arm. Jake, look at their faces. I looked closer at the circle of possessed people. In the rain and the fading light, I could see them more clearly now. Their faces were slack, empty. Whatever made them human was gone, worn away by whatever spirit was riding inside them. How long do they last? I asked. The bodies you possess? Long enough, Samuel's spirit said. Years, sometimes, until they wear out. That's what I was afraid of. Rodriguez raised his pistol. I'm not making any deals with demons. Rodriguez, wait. I started, but he'd already fired 3 shots. The bullets hit Samuel's body in the chest. He staggered back, blue light pouring from the wounds like liquid. The other possessed people started moving toward us. Into the cave, Tom shouted. Deep as we can go. We ran into the darkness, our flashlights, HTS cutting wild patterns on the walls. The cave went back farther than I'd thought, twisting and turning. Behind us, I could hear footsteps. Too many footsteps. There! Rodriguez pointed his light at a narrow opening. We can defend that. We squeezed through into a small chamber. It was barely big enough for the 3 of us, but that meant only one person could come through at a time. We had a chance. Morrison came through first. I shot him 3 times, center mass, and he kept coming. Tom hit him twice more before Morrison finally went down, but the body kept twitching, and that blue light was still in his eyes. They don't die, Rodriguez said, his voice cracking. They just don't die. More came. We shot them, fought them, pushed them back through the opening. My ears were ringing from the gunfire in the enclosed space. My hands were slick with blood, some of it mine, most of it from things that used to be people. Then the shooting stopped. Not because we wanted it to, but because we were out of bullets. The 3 of us stood there in the dark, breathing hard, listening to the sounds of bodies moving on the other side of that opening. Jake, Tom said quietly, I need to tell you something. My grandmother, she told me the old stories. She said if the spirits ever came, there was one way to fight them, one way to make them listen. Tom, blood speaks to blood, he continued. That's what she said. The spirits respect sacrifice, real sacrifice. Not violence, but choice. What are you talking about? He was already moving toward the opening. I'm Cherokee, Jake, on my mother's side. My blood is their blood. If I offer myself willingly, they have to honor that. They have to hear my request. Tom, no. I grabbed his arm, but he shook me off. My girls will have their daddy's pension. They'll be okay. But you and Rodriguez need to get out of here. You need to make C. Nobody else dies in this place. Tom, we can find another way. There is no other way. He looked back at me, and there were tears on his face. You know it, Jake. Deep down, you know that these things won't stop. They'll kill everyone who comes here until someone makes them listen. He stepped through the opening before I could stop him. I am Thomas Williams, I heard him say in a loud, clear voice. Son of Mary Crow, daughter of Sarah Crow, descended from the people of this land. I offer myself willingly as a speaker between worlds. Hear me, old ones, hear my words and honor the old bargain. The cave went silent. Even the sounds of breathing stopped. This man, Jacob Mountain View, and his companion have shown no disrespect. They came here following orders, not out of malice. I ask that you let them go free. In exchange, I offer myself as a permanent vessel. Take me, and through me, hear the words of the living world. Tom. I tried to push through the opening, but Rodriguez held me back. He's making his choice, Rodriguez said, and I heard the tears in his voice too. Don't make it meaningless. Light filled the cave, that blue light, but brighter than before. I heard Tom gasp, and then I heard his voice change, deepen, become something else. The bargain is accepted, Tom's voice said, But it wasn't Tom anymore. Go, Jacob Mountain View. Go and remember what was sacrificed here. Speak for us when the builders come. Speak for the sacred ground. Tom, I said, my voice breaking. Tom, I'm sorry. Go, the voice said again, gentler this time. Go now, before the sun rises and the offer ends. Rodriguez pulled me back through the cave, back toward the entrance. I went, but I kept looking back, kept hoping Tom would follow. He didn't. We made it out of the mountains just as dawn broke. The rain had stopped and the fog was lifting. When we looked back at Devil's Backbone Hollow, it looked peaceful, beautiful even, like nothing bad had ever happened there. Rodriguez and I told the same story. The raid went bad. We were ambushed by the moonshiners. Our team was killed in the firefight. The operation was abandoned by the time backup arrived. The stills were destroyed. The moonshine was gone. There was nothing left to find. They believed us, or at least they didn't push too hard. 4 federal agents and a sheriff's deputy dead in a moonshine raid. It was a tragedy, but it happens sometimes in these mountains. Rodriguez transferred to California a month later. He calls me sometimes late at night, and we don't talk about what happened. We don't need to. I took an administrative job after that, pushed papers, trained new rangers, stayed away from field operations. Every time someone talked about developing that area, about building that road through Devil's Backbone Hollow, I found a way to slow it down. Environmental concerns, archaeological considerations, budget issues. I've been fighting that road for 10 years now, and I'll keep fighting it until I retire. Sometimes I go back to that hollow alone in the daytime. I never go inside, but I leave things at the entrance. Tobacco, like the old Cherokee did. Corn. Sometimes a bottle of good whiskey, though never moonshine. And sometimes, when the light is just right, I see someone standing at the cave entrance. He's too far away to make out clearly, but he stands like Tom stood, and he waves like Tom used to wave. I wave back, then I leave. The development project for Devil's Backbone Hollow was finally canceled last year. The official reason was environmental protection. Endangered species, they said. But I know the truth. Tom is still there, still speaking for the sacred ground, still keeping the bargain. I'm 54 now, and I'll retire in 6 years. When I do, I'm going to find someone else who understands these mountains, someone who respects the old ways. I'm going to tell them this story, and I'm going to ask them to keep watching over that hollow, because some places aren't meant for the living. Some places belong to the old ones, to the spirits who were here first. And some men make sacrifices that echo through the years, keeping all of us safe from things we don't understand. I never believed in cursed moonshine. I never believed in mountain spirits or possessed people or sacred ground. But I believe now. God help me, I believe now. And if you ever find yourself in the Great Smoky Mountains, near a place called Devil's Backbone Hollow, do me a favor. Turn around and walk away. Some doors are meant to stay closed. Some mysteries are meant to stay mysteries. And some moonshine is better left untasted.